one. I've rolled it. You know what? I'm just gonna go live right from the bang. Just so yeah. I'm glad that my beautiful wife Camilla wasn't watching, because if she was, she would have told me that I hadn't clicked the start stream button. That's kind of good, because that was kind of an awkward beginning anyway. At least this time it's entertaining. So hello and welcome everybody. This is DH Thorne. DH explains it all, or I'm going to Thorne-splain. That's our new meme here in Thorne Hub, is I'm going to be doing some Thorne-splaining. But yeah, apologies for that. I literally thought we hit go. So there is a new link there in the pinned comment. That is to help support Eddie. He's going for some certifications, and that costs money, which, you know, Eddie needs. So he's offering to do readings and consultations.
Buy my shit.
So everybody say hello to Eddie. We've had him here plenty of times before. But I want to preface this before we let Eddie just, you know, talk, because he likes to overtalk me. I'm being a dick, by the way. We are going to be, it's very light. If we talk politics tonight, it's literally not going to be, and I'm not aiming at it. I'd rather not, actually. But if it does come up, it's going to be more from the philosophical angle, preferably. We're not going to be debating about different people, any of that stuff, because, you know, fog of war and echo chambers and all that shit. So we're talking about primarily philosophy here, if we're talking about it at all. So tell your friends, we're not bringing those subjects up tonight. Last week, was almost wall-to-wall politics the whole fucking time. So this night we're aiming on spirituality. And of course, Gnostic Luciferianism does lean into geopolitical, but more about philosophy than anything else. So hello and welcome to Eddie. Eddie, tell the newcomers who you are and what you're about and what this thing you're doing is.
I am the Reverend Dr. Edmund Wallace Romanoff III. And I'm an alcoholic. No.
Who isn't? That's weak sauce these days. Actually, that's the most destructive one that is legal anyway.
Yeah. Oh, easily.
I would think that, I mean, not to get too weird about it, I know meth is worse and fentanyl's worse, but alcohol, dude, it's because it's so normalized. It's like, I don't know. So when someone's on meth or something, they know they have a problem. You know, when someone's an alcoholic, half the time they don't. Because half the time you can be an alcoholic and not even realize it.
Well, and from someone who spent some time in the nut hut with addicts, alcoholics are the worst. Mm-hmm. Absolutely the worst.
Mm-hmm. I think they have more, we'll say, dysfunction, personally, you know, because the dysfunction continues and continues throughout. It's not just the... it's not just when they're drunk, you know?
Yeah. The demon drink.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. But, so I'm it's been a while. I'm a left-hand path Luciferian Gnostic mystic. And I can go about 3 hours on each one of those terms. And I'm doing a soft launch of some services. All through the month of June, half price, $20 for readings, $50 for hour-long consultation. And readings are tarot or rune. And in the days that follow, that coffee link will have, you know, you can buy it right there.
Yeah, so the pinned comment is the link to his coffee, and he says it's a work in progress. And speaking of works in progress, like today I don't want to say too much because you don't want to blow your load with the dopamine, but I made huge progress on the book. I'm finally happy with, you know, like 4 or 5 chapters. Like before I couldn't get 4 or 5 chapters to line up in a way that I was happy with. They were too all over the place. This is like ka-chung, 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 ka-chung. I love it now. Yeah, watch me like ruin it next week. But I do intend on getting either a new website or my old website refurbished. You know, and when I do, there's going to be, you know, there's probably going to be some new faces besides myself on there. I'll probably invite Eddie to do some services through the website and stuff too. It's not like a traditional house. You know, it's not like when I was in, From the Ashes. You know, it's more of a, hey, we're all friends. We trust each other. these are people I recommend and know for these services and things. And, you know, no, it's nothing really big. It's just going to be there. But I'm going to be launching something somewhat substantial, at least in intent. So we'll have to see if I can make that move. But we're almost there. I'm almost to the point where I feel like I can do it. I'm having a good day. That'll probably end after next week. Something will happen. There'll be like a 7.2 on the Richter scale of politics, and I'll be like, fuck, now I'm fucking distracted again.
It's funny you mention AI, because there's a side project that we will be talking about at some point. Yes.
Speaking of Thorne-splaining.
Well, that's already, I can blow the load on that one now. I have a GPT-4 based chatbot replacement for DH called ChatDHT. It's just that I haven't been able to figure out how to turn it into a Discord bot. So it only works with the command line now. So I think I'm going to turn it into a little simple web wrapper. But there may be other AI occult related things.
Do you think we could get like the AI to work through the chat here at some point, and like I can make it a moderator, and you can ask it questions, and it'll handle the light work?
I don't know YouTube, but it's just a matter of, as long as you can get text into it and have somewhere to put the text that comes out of it. Yeah. What I'm really looking forward to is, right now the responses are limited to 8 kilotokens, which a token is a part of a word. It's not a whole word. They're going to be internally, they have, and with some of their partners, OpenAI has, but they haven't opened it up to us beta testers yet, is 32 kilotokens, which is like a chapter of a book. It would also be expensive, because that would be like $3 or $4 a pop to run.
Which, I've been using ChatGPT as a writing assistant, primarily because Google fucking sucks when you try to Google any information at all anymore. Unless it's about some contemporary sports movie bullshit, it's really fucking hard to ask it a question about anything, because it used to be you could use Google Foo, as they called it, because if you knew how to make your search terms, you can get the information you wanted. Now it literally doesn't matter what I fucking put with Google Foo. It literally just gives me bullshit. If I type the word Lucifer, for example, into that, you cannot get, at least not on the first 5-10 pages anyway, anything that's not related to that fucking TV show. You literally have to, even if you say, I want the mythology of Lucifer, half of the links are going to be to Marvel. I mean, DC, I think, is that Marvel or DC? Anyway, DC. Half of it's going to be links to the DC bullshit.
It's a Sandman spinoff.
It's really frustrating. So I use ChatGPT, not necessarily for historical research stuff. That's still a pain in the ass, but I use it mainly for, so for example, compare non-duality and solipsism. Like, what's the difference? Like, what? Because you get that that is a difficult discussion for newbies, because it is, on one level, it is like it is almost cosmic solipsism. It's not, but I could totally understand why someone would think so. And so it's important, like that's an area of like dialogue that I'm working on, not in my book per se necessarily, but in my outreach, when I talk to people get that confused very easily. I had one person lose their shit with me when I first came on the scene, because he's like, this is a book of solipsism, you're full of shit, you're crazy. And it's like, and then so I responded, and they got mad because I responded in kind to the tone I was getting. So it was like, all right, fuck off, dude. So it's one of those things, that people do get screwed up on. But yeah, so let's go through the chit chat here and say hi to everybody that we did say hi to you guys. I want you guys to know, everybody that's in the live chat right now.
Oh, we had a great discussion. Yeah, we solved all the problems.
We did. I wish I was recording.
Lost forever.
Some of you guys dropped off the feed here. But we got Anthony Viv says hello. Atropos says greetings. Joffrey says hello. Jay Baldel. I love saying it like that. I don't know if that's the right way, but that's how I like to say it. Hail, children of darkness, he said. Jay, are you a male or a female? It doesn't matter. Maiden Liberty says, hello, infidels. Yes, indeed. Wyatt is here. Worry no more. Your God King has returned. Lots of crazy poverty-related shit has been happening lately. I'm glad I could catch this one. Wyatt, I don't know if I want to know. Do your parents need to learn to code? Like, I hope you're okay, bro. I'm only teasing. Skeleton Power says, hail and merry Friday. Friday? Oh, from the future, because you're over there in Australia. Yep. Well played, Skeleton Power. Let's see. Maiden Liberty says, DH and Eddie entered a different timeline. We did. We totally fucked up. I fucked up. Eddie didn't fuck up. Let's see. Where are we? Christian's here. Says, oh, we're starting. Yes, we're starting. We screwed up. And let's see. Nanurta's here. What's up, DH? They said. Nanurta's a fun character in the streams, always to have. He's got his finger on the pulse of the underground there a little bit. Joffrey says, no politics. Exactly. Many ticks indeed. Stu is here. Says, yo, DH, Hall Satan. Yeah, we'll I mean, I'm not a Satanist. I know that's been like, people have thought that because of my imagery and stuff, but I am not.
You can call me one if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer not to be called those things because there's so much front loading of, baggage with a lot of these terms.
I totally use it just for the shock value, though. I do the Elaine on Seinfeld thing, just.
I think Luciferian does it too. It's just got a little bit, touch of class, a little bit more. Yeah. When I say I'm a Gnostic Luciferian, that's got a touch of just class to it. Satan's the wrath, Lucifer's the pride, right?
Luciferianism is directly from the 18th century Enlightenment Romantic Satanism. So that's, why we're bringing back the Hellfire Club. We're going to put on powdered wigs. We're going to chase hookers around Philadelphia. It'll be awesome. Just like Ben Franklin wanted us to.
If this world could straighten its ass out, I would love to just hang out a long time in Philly, man. Philly is a fun city. At least for me, it was. Coming from New York, ironically enough, people are like, why would you choose like Philly over New York? There's something about Philly. I think it's the old world quality it has. New York has just been updated to the point where it's like, yeah, fuck it, I don't like it anymore.
Well, let me drive you through Kensington sometime, and we'll see if you still think that.
Probably not. But the little bit of Philly that I've been through was pleasant. I like the Old Quarter, and I like Eastern Philly, near Camden. I know there's like some dangers over by Camden, but that whole strip reminds me of a little bit of the way Soho used to be. Soho, Chinatown, that used to be like a vibe that was there, and a little bit of that vibe is there now. But yeah, I'm not as virulently violently anti-Philadelphia as I once was. Although Wawa can still suck a dick. So I think for me, it's just I only have really explored two cities even a little bit with any kind of I guess Newark counts now too, but it's like Newark's kind of like, no offense to my Newark friends, but it's kind of way more of an armpit than either one. I like parts of Manhattan, especially in the 90s, but after we'll say 2010 or so, it just started to go like, I don't know, it's too much like a big outdoor mall everywhere. It's lost some of its charm.
I'm a hillbilly. I get itchy in a town with more than 50,000 people in it.
Don't blame you. I don't blame you.
I miss Times Squares, like the Times Square, like the 70s and 80s, like New York, like gritty,
when you had the red light district,
dirty, yeah.
When you actually had barrel fires everywhere, like you could find barrel fires even in like the heart of Manhattan. Like you didn't have to go far. Like the movie Escape from New York.
Yes, that wasn't a
future yet. Like that, yeah, it wasn't a stretch yet. Like that was literally, short of the fact that it was all dudes, I mean, that was pretty much
the Warriors.
Right.
Like,
I mean, exactly that. And now I was a little kid for that, but I started cutting my teeth on Manhattan in the 90s, as a young teenager going there for whatever reason. But like, I still remember the vibe when it felt like, the movie Last Dragon with Bruce Leroy. Like I still remember that vibe. I remember the yellow cabs. I remember all of that shit. And my heyday was right around the year 2000, because that's when I was working there as a web designer and, director of a department actually, but I started as a web designer. And Dude, that was a nice time to be there, right before 9/11, pretty much. Like I stopped working in the city like 6 months before that. So like that was a wild time to be there. Ninurta says they got my Shadownomicon book, about to read it a second time. Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's going to deserve not so much an update, but an integration with the new techniques that I'm working through, which not many people know much about, and I'm not going to be talking too much about it yet. But I will say that it's, if you understand at least the methodology of chaos magic, that is still in place, but the under the hood changes so much with what I'm going to be teaching soon that it's really its own thing. You know, you can say like any system will work with it. It's meant to be universal because it is universal. It's literally how your life manifests. And it's just learning how to guide that. We'll put it that way. So let's see. I'm going to say it like that. Jay asks, in discussions of aliens and Atlantis? Absolutely. We can talk about that stuff potentially tonight. If it gets brought up in the natural course of things. Kelly Meadows, good evening. Work is crazy. Busy, everybody. Sick right now before the holiday. Yeah, it's a bad time to be sick. Spring colds. Early spring is one thing. Late spring really sucks.
I get a lot of migraines in the spring, and this spring has been brutal. Because of the tree bukkake.
The tree, you know, my wife and I, we have a squishables obsession. Like we have so many stuffed animals in the house. I'm not even ashamed to admit that I love them too, right? It's like I'm confident enough in my masculinity. We have upwards of probably 100 squishies now. I wouldn't be surprised when you combine all of the squishies and when I say squishies, I mean every stuffed animal like type. Like we have, I don't know, all of them. So it's usually my wife that collects them all, but I help because I like them too. So anyway, she's got this little toy bee that is like her favorite right now, and so we were playing with it in the house, joking around, and here it comes. All right, here it is. This is the bee. Look at the little bee. That's the bee. So we were joking around that bees are basically part of a three-way between all the different plants. I mean, it's basically, you know, traveling the cum of one plant to another fucking plant. So yeah, they're
in the treatise of the left emanation, the bee would be Leviathan.
All right. Yeah. Oh boy, we could turn anything into perverted fucking sex magic if we try hard enough. And sorry, Atropa, I didn't mean to bring up any triggering stuff. She said you had to talk about it. My father was alcoholic. I did not grow up with him. She divorced them. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Atropa. I didn't know. People are asking, Soul's asking about archons. Man, there's so much we could talk about this. We probably will get to it. So, let's see.
I like archons. They were framed. Yaldabaoth was framed.
There's a lot of look. The thing that's important in my philosophy, and what I'm going to say is, so it actually has a little bit to do with what Wyatt was asking. He asked a question up above about what do you think of spirits or blah, 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 blah. I want to say this, and this is something I think Eddie will largely agree with. He might have a slightly different perspective, but everything, literally everything that you witness is a shadow of reality. That goes for the spirit realm. That goes for the material. The spirit realm is not more real than the material realm. It's a step closer, we could say, I suppose, but it's not more real. Its reality is just as illusory as the material realm. The thing about the spirit realm that makes it valuable is you pull out a lot of the distracting dualities that get in the way, a lot of the limitations of materiality when you delve into the spirit realm. You can go anywhere in an instant. You can, all this kind of stuff. And
keep going. I'm sorry, this is very unprofessional of me, but I gotta go grab some pills.
So as long as you don't just have a giant fart right on camera, that'd be fine. So everything from the tip of your nose to the back of your head, everything that you witness is illusory. Now, when I say illusory, I don't mean that there's no reality under it. I'm simply saying it's a shadowy projection of reality. So if I were to punch Eddie in the face, it's like two shadows punching at each other.
Your mom's an illusion.
Yeah. I don't technically have to hit Eddie in reality to punch him in the material world, if that makes sense. It's akin as an analogy to a shadow. So that means the gods, the spirits, all of that, including yourself, are a projected shadow. Now, don't take the analogy too far, because people do that. But as an analogy, it's a projected shadow of a higher reality, or deeper reality, or lower reality. I don't really care how you want to organize it, because there's no real hierarchy to it. The hierarchy is perceptual. It's not the reality of it. In a singularity, there is no hierarchy, right?
Yeah, I was talking about, I don't remember to who today about this. And by the way, my back's really acting up, so I just took some pills. So this discussion might get really cool in about 20 minutes.
Let me get my vape, and then we'll.
But so, like the whole argument about our spirits, ontologically independent, separate beings, right? And so what I mean by that is, if I'm in a room and I evoke, say, Asmodeus, and then I leave the room, is Asmodeus still in the room that I just walked out of, right? Does he exist on his own as a separate thing? And it kind of hit me all at once, and I pulled a total DH where I'm like, well, is anything really an ontologically separate entity from anything else? Right? Some people act like, well, if the spirits are parts of our own brain, as Crowley liked to say, does that mean it's bullshit? And and my response to that would be, you say that like everything else isn't bullshit too. Mm-hmm. Like the brick is the brick. You're part of the brick. The brick is in me. I am in the brick. Something non-duality.
Yeah. So, that's a major part of what's building in the new book, but it's not really in the new book. It's in the core essence of every monist non-dual tradition ever. From the original interpretations of Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, non-dualism. Hermeticism is a little harder to see because they talk in such theistic language, but it's there.
Well, the operative word in all of Hermeticism, the really important thing, is that little piece at the end of verse 2 of the Emerald Tablet that everybody forgets after as above, so below, as below, so above, for the accomplishment of one thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the, this is something that is, this is why I don't like, this is why I frown upon a little bit the Da Vinci Code for Goth's method of attainment, because it's not that it won't help. There's some people that are so stuck in their left brain they have to go that way. But for me, I frown upon it because the answer is very simple. The problem is realizing it for yourself that's hard, because you can't intellectually know this. What I'm talking about, what Eddie's talking about, to some degree, these are not things you can prove on paper. Mm-hmm. Okay, like you can prove any argument on paper. I can prove, there's mathematical proofs for virtually anything you can imagine. There's but this is not something you prove with dialogue or language. The only purpose of dialogue or language really is apotheosis, apophasis, neti, negative logic. Okay. So if you're really studying the real mystical arts, which are the foundation of magic, anybody who's teaching or talking about magic that has zero interest in the mystical or the real nitty-gritty of metaphysics, I'm not saying you can't learn from them, because you can learn techniques all day long. But if you don't understand the metaphysics under it, I question a lot, because that's where it comes from. And if you don't understand the fundamental essence, then magic is just a cookbook, and it doesn't work that way. Magic doesn't work.
Cookbook.
And it doesn't work like a cookbook. Okay. That doesn't mean you won't have success with it. It just means that it doesn't really work that way. It can still work in spite of that, by the way. I'm just saying that you're missing out on the point.
Well, that's the why I specify mystic at the end of my 4 terms, right? Is that for those who don't know, because we do have new people and it's been a while. I was a Christian for 40 years. I was a seminarian and I was a lay Sunday school teacher. So the difference between evangelicalism and mainline Protestantism and lesser extent Catholicism, Orthodoxy, is that evangelicalism at its core is mystic. And what that means is you have to have a personal experience of it. All the books that have been written ever are just to get you to the point where you can have that experience. And once you have the experience, and it's interesting because this is talked about a lot in Christianity, especially evangelicalism, but it doesn't come from there. It's older than that. It's the core of the Eleusinian mystery, which is that once you face, and a lot of people like to say
that's the whole Jesus story is the Eleusinian mystery. You know?
Right. A lot of people like to say that it's ego death, but I think ego death is probably part of it, but it's not all of it. Once you've had that experience of that death and resurrection that occurs in the core mystical experience, you're immortal. You're invulnerable to death. And this is the core of what the Gospels were about, and it's the core of what the Eleusinian Mysteries was about. And if you die before you die, you will never die.
And this is where it gets corrupted. And this will lead us into Gnosticism in a minute, but this is where it gets corrupted by religion, because religion says, okay, that's for our priests, but the assholes in the pews, you're not getting that piece. There are many non-dual Christian doctrines, if you know where to look. There's plenty of non-dual Christians out there, even in classical periods, okay? They might not have said we're non-dualists, they didn't have that word, but their expression of it was clearly not dualistic. They didn't, the idea of separation from God. If you say you're not separate from God, yeah, maybe the classical church would call you a heretic, but if you phrased it right, they might not. If you say I'm
von Bingen got away with it, so
yeah, if you can say I am separated from God, but not necessarily in the absolute sense, but in the I am closing myself off from God's sense, right? Well, that's in every tradition, by the way, of non-duality, and you can get away with that because that still sounds like there's what a lot of the Christian dogmas don't want you to do is to say you are God, because D.H. Thorne can't be God, Eddie can't be God, and that's true in all non-dual traditions. It's just that we are God, but we're not. When we say we're Eddie and D.H. are figments of sort of imagination, but their source is the divine. Their source is divinity itself. In other words, we're not, remember what I said earlier, and this is I want to say this because it brings me back to the room comment you made. There's a whole avenue of conversation there. As I said before, we are all projections of the higher self, of the divine. Okay? And you can model that any way you want, they're all wrong. Literally any model of the divine and how it emanates or manifests is as good as any other. You could literally say that God is finger painting the universe on his belly button, and that's as good a description, or floating around the back of a turtle. That is just as good as the most complex, sophisticated, rational, scientific, metaphysical description you could make.
The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. I'm quoting it right?
Yep. That's close enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
The name, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao.
Or to paraphrase Richard Feynman.
If you think you understand,
if you think you understand the Tao, you don't understand the Tao.
And he was paraphrasing a Catholic priest, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
That's the thing that physicists do, because they have a bug up their ass about religion. I don't blame them. But they have a bug up their ass about religion. In fact, it's so far up there that they won't even look at metaphysics anymore. Only a few of them will, which is depressing. You got Donald J. Hoffman and Bernardo Kastrup, which are like two of the few. And they're doing amazing work because that's what they're doing. I think they're going to revolutionize the sciences. It'll take 100 years, but it'll be there. Their work will be the foundation, I believe.
There was a question I want to get to, but finish your thought.
Yeah, and once I do, we can go into the Gnostic thing.
Yeah.
And just to touch on that for a brief second, Gnosticism is usually expressed in dualistic terms, but it doesn't have to be. There's non-dual versions of Gnosticism, by the way. So when Eddie was talking about the room, and the question is the spirit there when I'm not there? Well, there's no there for there to be a spirit in the first sense. There's no room. There's no you. There's no ritual chamber. Those are all appearances. Space-time is not fundamental to reality, as it so turns out. Science is coming to terms with that slowly. I forget the name of the guy who proclaimed it, but space-time is doomed. It is no longer, if you ask somebody 50 years ago in the science field, space-time was a fundamental or the fundamental reality, right? And everything was a projection of space-time. Well, it's turning out space-time is a projection of something else. That means everything in space-time, you, me, everything, including the laws we observe, are projections of something else. Mm-hmm. And that's, if it's not spatial or temporal, what the fuck is it? Gee, this is starting to sound a lot like the monad to me, guys. It's starting to sound like Brahman to me. It's starting to sound like every mystical divine essence ever spoken of. You can play around with its model. They're all wrong. No model's ever good. You can get a better model, but they're all wrong.
In the Church of the Subgenius, we call it the gonad.
Call it the gonad. I like the great whatever. I think that was one of those. I don't know if you came up with that, but
that was me.
That was you made that up.
TM. You have to put a TM at the end.
I might put that in the book. I was thinking about putting a little note to Eddie in my book that's going to be the blank page. This page left eternally blank for Eddie. But it's so there is no room for the spirit to inhabit. There's no you to go in the room. And people are going to say, well, Thorne, of course there is. I see it. Of course you see it. That doesn't mean it's there. Because there's another new piece of information. So first, let me finish that space-time thing. I've been racking my brain for years because you hear things below the size of the Planck length or shorter than the time span of the Planck second have no functional meaning in physics. This basically means they don't exist. So once you get below the Planck length, the only thing left is a singularity, and that the funky thing about singularities is they have no volume. They have no edge. They're just a location. The problem with that is you literally can't make them overlap, touch, bounce into each other, or do anything. Because there's literally no there to touch. They're so infinitely small, you can't get them to touch. Unless they occupy the exact same location, right? And if they're infinitely small, there is no there to, so you can't have bumping particles is what I'm getting at. So space-time, space-time as a thing is not true. It is almost, well, I know it is, but from a ontological, just logical conversation perspective, it's impossible to prove this. At least right now. There's probably some people who will eventually do it. But space-time is a mental space. It is something occurring in the mind. And people are going to say, so it's happening in the brain? No, fool, because your brain is something you think exists in space-time too. There is no brain. You don't have a brain. A brain is just what it looks like from a third-person view. But that's not what it is. This is the essence of why you can fuck with a crystal. It's literally just a piece of stone. It doesn't mean anything, but its essence can mean everything within this thing. There's nothing that special. It's piezoelectric. Ooh, great. That's cool. But that doesn't cause change in the world. But it could, something about it could reflect the essence of something greater.
Well, and the key is that, so, boy, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without going through the entire explanation up to the point. The thing is that it's, so magic is simply at the functional level, right? So now we've been talking up at the top level. I'm going back down to the bottom level, the straight operational level. Magic is just symbolically encoded intent, right? And so when we have the giant spreadsheet of correspondences, right? And amethyst means whatever, I don't know. Right? When you're waving that around, right? The properties of the rock, the physical properties of the rock are not what matters. Right? Same as you waving it around isn't what matters. What matters is the fact that in when I'm doing it, but you know what I mean. In here, your intention, why you're waving that particular rock around, is where the magic happens. Right?
So let's take it another level. The problem that people have here when they're talking about intention, everybody's talking about their ego's intention, their egoic intention. This is where I'm getting at with why, if you're fucking around with magic, the practice, without the mystical really solid as a big part of your practice, you don't realize that your egoic desires are another illusion. You know, let's put it like this. Okay, this is a conversation I love having with people. It's about the will. And I'll say, how do you change your will? People will say, well, I just want it. No, you got it wrong already. You're instantly wrong. You've already failed the test. You have no idea what you're talking about. How do you change the will? What could possibly change the will? The will is inevitable. The will is the Tao. The will is what is. Okay? You cannot change the will. What about intention, though? Is there such a thing as intention? Well, yes, but not in the D.H. Thorne's intention. D.H. Thorne's intention is an illusion, too. But the divine's intention is real. But that intention isn't like, oh, I need to do this because I'm lacking that. The divine's intention, remember, the divine is timeless, it is boundless, it is all, it is nothing. There is nothing it needs, nothing it wants. There's no reason for it to do anything save its own intention and will. And its intention doesn't have a cause. It is both as it is the essence of spontaneity, but it is also free. There's nothing forcing it down any path. So the intention of the divine is the same as the will of the divine, is the same as consciousness of the divine, is the same as love, is the same of all those essential things that are irreducible about divinity. But they're all really abstract too, because none of those words means anything if you really think about it. What does consciousness even mean? We have a description of it, but what does it actually mean? If I say the number 2, we can get to the essence of 2 by saying it's a relationship between other quantities. That's a pretty good, hard definition of any number.
It's more than 1, it's less than 3.
Right. It has to be in a relationship, but you can get there. Consciousness doesn't. Love doesn't. All of these words are, when you reduce them down, okay, they all are just a big question. They don't mean anything, not by themselves. So that's not what the divine is either. The divine is not consciousness. The divine is not love. They're just this is why if you look at no matter what tradition you're working through, if you're looking at Kabbalah, you're looking at Neoplatonism, Why do you think it goes through these different levels of these more and more abstract ideas till you get to this weird shit that doesn't have any? It's the same idea.
And let me explain to you something that I missed it about the tree for a long time, right? So you've got, I really want to use the Clifothic names, but I'm not going to, because that's a whole nother discussion, but I'm including them in this. You've got Malkuth at the bottom. So that's the kingdom. That's the manifest world. That's the universe, right? It's you and me and everything we see. And you've got Kether at the top, the crown, right? And then in between them, you have these triads, but the supernal triad's missing one after the fall. So think about those. We're not going to get real specific here, but there's two things that people miss a lot, which is, think about those triads, right? So the first triad above Malkuth, that's about you as an individual with an ego, right? That's DH, that's Eddie, right? Then you pierce the veil, and what's the first thing you run into, right? You're according to Crowley, we'll use his language, your holy guardian angel, right? Well, that's also you, but that's the you that you were before you, if you believe in reincarnation. That's all of the yous that you've ever been in that line. So then what's that supernal about? Well, that's Atman, right? That's the universal mind.
The universal soul. Yeah.
Even that, then you transcend that and get the Kether, which sort of becomes Brahman. But the other thing that people miss a lot is that the tree does not begin or end at Kether. Beyond that,
you still got Ein Sof, Ein, and Ein Sofar.
Right. And if you run it backwards, right, which is what practical Kabbalah is all about, you're running from the top down, it's the story of creation. From the bottom up, it's the story of us escaping creation, and being united with God. So the first thing you run into is Ein Sof Aor, the endless light, right? And then you run into
blinding,
right?
Looks like nothing,
right? The glory of God, the Shekinah, right? The thing that would glow on the temple. On the Day of Atonement. And then you get past that and you get just Ein Sof, which is limitless, right? It's infinity. And then you get to Ayin. And you know what Ayin means in Hebrew? Nothing. But it's not
nothing as in literal
nothing.
Zero, non-existence. It's nothing in the no thing sense.
It is chaos in the Greek sense. And then beyond that, so in Greek cosmology under Hesiod's theogony, of course, you have nothing, which is truly nothing. And then a gap opens up in that, a chasm, which is why we call it chaos, right? And that's the void of manifestation. And in Kabbalah, they talk about, well, no, the nothing contracted and then exploded out again, almost like a big bang.
Or an implosion, you might say, too. When I was younger, my philosophy was that the universe was an implosion, not an explosion. Like, that's how I always viewed it. So very similar, I suppose. It's
like a plutonium bomb, right? You implode it, and then the magic happens, and a city disappears. But the important part there is that to bring it to the most succinct formulation I can think of from the great mystics at Monty Python, we come from nothing, we go to nothing. What have we lost? Nothing.
And that's the thing. If in order to really do really far-reaching magic, you literally have to be able to say goodbye to yourself, because it's going to be gone if you do a big enough thing. It just is.
But the important thing too is that it's important to have that experience and recognize the reality, if you can call it that, or more to the point, the non-reality of everything. But at the same time, the important part of having those levels and those paths and those spheres and all that diagram shit that we have, whether it's Kabbalah or the 9 worlds of Norse mythology, or what are the Buddhist wheel of with the 8 things, doesn't really matter. The important
they're all thought forms for the same idea,
right,
though.
And why they exist is to give us. The reason they exist is to give us a handle on something, because, as I say many, many times, even non-dualists look both ways before crossing the street, right? Because, yeah, okay, I and the bus are one, but I don't want my ass and the bus's bumper to be one in the physical sense. And so a very valuable skill to have, to bring it back around to the spirit question, is, yes, understand that ultimately we are essentially united, right? Me and the spirit are one. But and even from a if you're operating from a mainly psychological perspective, which I tend to do, but understand that I mean psychology in a much bigger box than what most.
Right. It's not just, let's pull out the DSM-5 and see why your spells don't work. This is actually this is more like parapsychology, really.
Yeah. Well, like Lon Milo Duquette likes to say, is magic all in your head? Of course it's all in your head, but you have no idea how big your head is. Is that, yes, I understand that, let's say that, I'm working with Asmodeus, that Asmodeus is a sock, right? And there's a hand in that sock, and that hand in that sock is ultimately the same hand that's in the sock that is me, right? And from a psychological perspective, that when I'm talking to Asmodeus, I'm actually talking to archetypal information from my individual and collective unconsciousness, yada, 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 right? But that's not what's in my head when I'm doing an evocation, right? When I'm doing an evocation, I'm acting as if this is a separate being that I am inviting to come into this space, and I am talking to him, right? And it's not from that very chaos magic perspective, but it's not even so much of the belief makes it work. It's just that
belief is bullshit anyway. It has nothing to do with belief. It's actually the word I use is psyche, because it's not about your belief or even your thinking mind that you have incarnate. Your psyche, I mean, what's the original word for psyche? It means spirit, soul. Okay, so your psyche is, the way I like to think of it is the modality through which the divine witnesses itself. And as a modality, that means it's got a value. That means it's got it is not something that you can easily express. You could express it maybe in math, you could think of it almost like the seed formula for a fractal. It could be like 5 little numbers long, and that produces everything, but it is essentially what resonates with your psyche is what you see. What doesn't resonate with your psyche either only appears temporarily or not at all. So, for example, Eddie and I has nothing to do with belief. Belief is something that is ab extra. It's an emergent thing. It's another illusion. Belief is just you saying, I believe that. Belief doesn't mean anything. That's why I can't stand people say, just believe this, and no, bullshit. Because if it was based on belief, you'd never be wrong. If magic was based on belief, you would never be wrong in your life. You would literally just believe yourself into anything you want. That's bullshit. It's poppycock, and the people who've taught that for years should be slapped. People say, change your belief if you believe the right thing. No, fuck that. That's insanity. True knowledge, on the other hand, is what you need to seek.
Well, and that's exactly why, Pope Pete Carroll, describes the state as gnosis, not belief. It's the problem isn't that with the statement, belief is the key, right? That belief is what makes it possible. The problem there is not the statement. It's again, it's the definition that most people have of belief is very, very narrow. Mm-hmm. Whereas from a Christian existentialist perspective, a la Kierkegaard, the belief they're talking about in chaos magic, as being the key to making things work, is not, it's after the leap of faith, right? It's faith, it's not belief. And I'll give you the short form of the chair analogy, which is that if you've got a chair in front of you and you can believe all you want that chair is going to hold you up if you were to sit in it, but it doesn't amount to a hill of beans until you actually put your ass in that chair. And faith, so to bring that back around to the magical perspective, right? Belief is, I've designed this ritual, I've done this whatever, I have this plan in my head of this thing that I'm going to do, and it's going to cause reality to manifest this thing that I want, right? And that's you analyzing the chair and coming up with the notion that the chair will hold you up. Sitting in the chair, like once your ass is actually on the seat, that's the result. That's manifestation. Faith or belief or gnosis, let's use the term gnosis for it in the chaos magic sense, because that's the other problem I have with the term gnosis is you have to use it two different ways.
Yeah, I use it completely differently, but go ahead.
But I'll call it faith. Faith is that moment where you are now at the point of no return, right? No matter what happens from this point forward, you are committed. You can't stand up again, right? Your ass is accelerating towards the chair and you can't stop it. And the chair is either going to hold you up or it isn't, but it's too late for you to make it to back out now. It's what Kierkegaard meant by leap of faith. It's not a blind leap, but ultimately, yes, we are leaping from nothing into nothing, and we hope we hit something.
Yeah, faith is basically trust. It's not quite, but it's almost synonymous with the word trust. It's like belief and trust mixed together.
It's belief with passion.
Yeah. I like belief and trust, but yeah, I could see why you'd say passion. But to trust, you need to have evidence on some level, right? But the thing is that faith means, so there's a lot of semantics at play here. Mm-hmm. Because someone with real faith as described in the dictionary is belief without evidence, basically. Trust without evidence, faith without evidence. But the semantics here is that when we say there's no evidence, we mean there's no intellectual evidence. That doesn't mean there isn't knowledge evidence. And there is a difference between intellectual fact that's recorded and repeated like a parrot in your brain versus true knowledge. When Eddie was saying sitting down on the chair, you have faith right up until you sit on that chair. When you sit on the chair and it holds you up, that's gnosis. It held me up. I know it holds me up. That's a form of gnosis. And mystical gnosis is not just believing you're God, or like poor Wyatt there still struggling with the intellectual side, just going back and forth. What does it mean? This was it? Nothing. You think too much, dude. I'm just going to tell you as your friend, you think too much, bro. That's your big problem. You're very smart and that's your problem. Same problem I had growing up, which means hopefully when you do get it, you're going to be that much better, by the way, because once you get it, that intellect will turn into an ability to help others get it. Intellect does not serve you in magic. It doesn't. Intellect is there to service magic, but it doesn't serve. It's not what makes magic go. It's literally like the waiter, if you will. So, what I'm trying to get at here, though, is that when we're talking about these different words, we obviously have different definitions of them depending upon who we are. But I want to press on you some more things, okay? In 2022, 3 scientists, one of them had passed away before they got this, had won the Nobel Prize. And they won the Nobel Prize because they proved that reality is not locally real. In other words, either both or at least one of those things can't be true. Well, what does that mean? We hear that all the time. It sounds wild. What does that mean? It means that either things are not local, meaning they don't exist in a local frame, or they don't have attributes in themselves, meaning they have no charge, no spin, no value. They don't mean anything. They're totally without meaning by themselves. Or both are wrong. I think it's both. Okay, but either way, if one's wrong, they're all kind of wrong. So what does it mean when something is not locally real? You remember that old story of if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it? It literally means that it doesn't make a sound and there's no tree because there's no
tree, right?
There's no tree. Treeness only happens when there's an observer to observe treeness. That doesn't mean there's nothing there in the sense that it's nothing, but there is no thing there. It has no meaning, no value, no purpose, no essence. No, when I say essence, I mean no meaning essence. Meaning is applied after as an illusion. Think of it like just a Rorschach ink blot. We look at a Rorschach ink blot, and if it's made correctly, the person who made it didn't sit there going, let's make sure there's a butterfly there. No, they literally just, it's random. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, in the old days, they literally made it right there in front of you.
Right.
It's just that the reason, because it's a science, they standardized a certain set of them.
Because certain images mean they can figure things out. But the point of it, though, is what I'm getting at, is that a Rorschach ink blot, or at least it's, like Eddie was saying, its original connotation, it's a random blotch of ink or coffee grounds or whatever the fuck you're using. It's literally tea leaves, basically. Okay.
This is literally how tarot works.
When you look at a Rorschach ink blot, there's no butterflies there. There's no dragons, no demons, no guys with big giant schlongs. It is a random blotch on a page, meaning there's information there, but there's no meaning to that information. It's just a collection of relationships waiting to be manifested.
In the comp sci terms, it's data. It's not information. So data is data. A datum is a number, right? In a spreadsheet, it becomes information when there is a column header at the top of it that tells you that this number is a dollar amount that you paid for a house. Mm-hmm. It's data with context.
Let's even just think about numbers. What do numbers mean by themselves? And I don't mean the digits or the notations of number. I mean the actual essence of number. What does it mean? Well, there's 2 ways to look at this, either additive or divisive. Okay. You could either say everything is 1 infinity and then you divide that and get all the other numbers, or you say that there is only 1 and then you add it together and get to infinity. Either way, okay, none of those numbers mean anything unto themselves. No number by itself means anything. It only means something in relation to another number, including the number 1. So if you want to get an idea of mathematics, it's not about the notation. It's all about relationships. It has nothing to do with 2 means 2. 2 only means 2, like Eddie said before, when it's sandwiched between a 1 and a 3. When you can compare, when there's a relationship there, when it's relativistic. Well, if all is one boundless, infinite essence of being that has no edge or time or anything, what is everything inside of that? What is all these numbers? There are divisions of the one. You could say emanations of the one, projections of the one, whatever verbiage you want. They are a perspective of that one that is highlighted not by knowledge, believe it or not, but by ignorance. It's your ignorance that makes 2 out of 1, because you have to put a line between somewhere in that 1 and ignore something to make a 2 out of it. Some tiny infinite wedge has to be taken out of that, and now you've got 2. It's still 1, but it looks like 2. Okay, and you can do that infinitely. So ignorance is the source of So when we're talking about incarnation, getting down to Malkuth, we're actually talking about not creation. That's a feeble idea. That's a very imprecise idea. That's a sloppy, egoistic idea, because without the idea of creation, you can't exist as an ego. So let's unplug that for a minute and realize that getting down to Malkuth is actually stages of ignorance. The bottom being you have very little awareness of the divine. You do have awareness of it. Let me correct myself. You have total awareness of divinity. What you don't have is conscious awareness of it. Because awareness is a constant. You're always aware. You're just not always consciously aware of something. I am aware of Eddie, even when I'm not talking to him. I'm just not consciously aware of him. Well, what does that mean? Well, or how does that work? Doesn't awareness mean you know that? No. I can prove this to you. If you go to sleep tonight and I dump a bucket of water on you, you're going to wake up. How did you know to wake up, even though you weren't conscious when it happened? Because you still have awareness. And awareness can become consciousness. Awareness is the fundamental. Consciousness is the first tier. And then in consciousness is psyche, mind, everything else. So awareness is the fundamental nature of the divine. Consciousness is a behavior of awareness. It's awareness aware of something and being aware of that awareness. It's like that's your Trinity right there. So if you go to sleep tonight, you're going to lose conscious awareness of everything around you, forgetting for a moment that none of that really exists, by the way. Let's pretend the materialist delusion is right. So you go to bed tonight, plathunk, you lose conscious awareness of your bedroom, your body, the people around you, but you're still aware of it. Because if you weren't, if I dumped a bucket of water on you, you wouldn't wake up. You become consciously aware. So what is the subconscious? Subconscious is awareness without conscious attention. Everything is aware. Not everything is consciously aware, at least from your perspective. Everything has awareness. Everything is in awareness. I shouldn't say everything has awareness. That's just the colloquial language. I don't really mean that. But in awareness is all things. But conscious awareness is very limited. And that limitation of consciousness is what manifests reality as we know it. Because if you saw all of reality as it is, it would look like one thing. You wouldn't see shit. If you saw the entire, as we might call it, a multiverse, and that's still wrong because that's a projection, but let's pretend. If you could see the whole multiverse at once, what would you see? Nothing, because it would be totally beyond your ability to comprehend. I don't mean because you're a human. I mean, even the divine wouldn't see you from that frame of reference. It would just be at total peace with itself, because when you go into that really deep Gnostic state or samadhi or whatever word you like for it, you go there. You go to the darkness, to the void, to the chaos, to the emptiness, whatever your word for the abyss of all things is. You go there and you see no thing, but you're still conscious or aware of it, consciously aware of it. That's the top. And it's blissful as fuck because there's no worries. There's no you. In other words, there's no D.H. Thorne. The couple of times I've gotten there, there's no D.H. Thorne to work. It feels like you're dying. In fact, as it's happening, you're like, well, here I go. I'm gone. And then there's not even...
You know how I experienced it?
Like, I literally sit there and go, I hope I come back. I'm going to miss my wife.
This is simultaneously maybe the most edgy thing I've ever said, and also maybe the most geeky. So my experience of it was a vision of the universe where the only thing that existed in it was one supermassive black hole, and I fell into it.
Yeah, that was probably the ego death moment was right there. And it feels that way. It feels like it does feel like you're being extruded through a nothing. Like it's a weird feeling because you can have ego death without hitting that final plateau, by the way. You can literally hang out with the machine elves in another dimension and not have a person that you're riding to have that
my
experience.
first experience of ego death was before that, and it was a different thing. Actually, this is maybe even edgier. So I was kind of an asshole in my 20s for reasons.
Why did you give it up, Eddie? I feel like you're still good at it.
I'm still an asshole. I'm just no, I was like I was at like toxic incel level of asshole.
We were all
yeah
Wyatt's age once.
Yeah, and this was right before I ended up in the hospital.
Wyatt's gonna hit me. We love you, Wyatt.
So that me that I was, that persona, that calling it a persona, even in the full Jungian sense, doesn't capture it. I mean, that was me, but it was a different me. And that me, that woe is me, blaming everybody else for his problems, yada, 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 kept popping his head up and became a real problem for me. So what I did was, a very useful magical technique for working with childhood trauma, situations like this, working with for shadow work, which is you evoke yourself, right, as you were then. So I did that. I called him up, right, and then I sacrificed him to Lilith and Lucifer as a human sacrifice. That was my first act of human sacrifice, and he has never bothered me since.
So this is very related. The difference between someone, I'm going to use these terms loosely because there's a lot of baggage with these terms. The difference between someone who's enlightened and someone who's mundane, we'll say. The enlightened person, or I should say the mundane person, wears their divinity as a mask. The enlightened person wears their persona as a mask because they know their divinity.
Oh man, I have a really good song for that, and it was actually written and sung by Lon Milo Duquette, called "God for an Hour." And it's about this guy who sacrifices everything and sells his soul to a demon, and the demon's trying to talk him out of it. Like, being God's really not all that interesting. And then the punchline on the song right at the end is this demon leaning in and whispering to him, "All right, you're God for just 1 hour." And
now,
Huey had him.
and so everybody listening to me, everybody hearing my voice right now, I'm sure the majority of you are egos wearing divinity. You're not divinity wearing an ego. You haven't quite got it yet. Some of you may have. But even if you do, that's just ego saying, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it, I'm God. That's ego wearing divinity. In order to be divinity wearing an ego, that's a different thing entirely. That's channeling. That's a few times I've hit it in streams and people don't notice it. But when ego has stepped aside, and so when ego is doing its job, it's a waiter. It's facilitating. It's not taking credit or causing or pretending it's causing. It's literally a facilitator. It's an avatar. The divine wears the avatar as a mask. The problem ensues when you're a materialistic idiot, you wear your divinity as a mask instead of the other way around. You'll say, I'm God. No, you're not. The person saying I'm God is not God. That's something God's saying to themselves. But that's not, the blah, blah, blah is not God. Okay? When you say, if you look in a mirror and say that person's God, you've failed. You're done already. Just start over. If this was old school, if this was like the 1400s and you were at my monastery, I'd have Eddie get the thumb-sized stick and he'd just beat the shit out of you for a couple weeks, and you'd sit in the hot box until your ego went away.
That reminds me, one of the services I will be offering is my magical boot camp.
It's quite a segue there, Eddie.
My magical boot camp is going to involve me handcuffing you to a wall for 7 days while I repeatedly hit you with a taser and scream, "Get your shit together!"
Whoa, I was just going to say, do the dark room thing that I see that's pretty cool these days. You don't even need psychedelics. Just sit in a room that's totally pitch black for 5, 6, 7 days. You'll fucking see God.
Now, I've had it with the toxic buttholes in the community. So we're gonna solve that problem right at the get-go.
There's a reason why I'm rebranding. I'm trying to get away a little bit. Even this is going to go away. I have to figure out what my new symbology is going to be, because right now I don't need one. This is just aesthetic at this point. Except for the reality is a dream, make it lucid. That's still true. But and it's not that the symbol means nothing. We were talking about the different trinities of the how many trinities are there in the Kabbalah? Okay.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
Three. There's three of them, right?
3 triads. Yeah.
3 triads. What's a pentagram made out of? 3 golden triads with a specific ratio. Hello. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know that. Most people go, oh, it's a thing that goes up. No.
Why, it's almost like people did that on purpose. Almost,
isn't it? Almost. This is why I still like the pentagram, even though it's not necessarily what I'm going to be using. But people think the pentagram means the 5 elements. It can mean that for the same reason the Kabbalah can mean different elements and shit. But it also meant hygiene, which doesn't mean you wash your ass. It means harmony. It means living harmony. The flow of life, harmony.
No, it does mean you wash your ass, which is why witches' Sabbaths traditionally involve kissing the devil's ass.
Okay, all right. I think that must be the back pills kicking in, but...
You unlocked it.
I did it again. Through random bullshit, it comes out right. I don't know how we do it, Eddie. We throw enough bullshit at the wall and God falls off. It's pretty cool when it happens. So what I'm getting at with some of these things, and some of this stuff's in the book, is that what you think of as material reality is an illusion. When I say it's an illusion, though, that doesn't mean that there's no consequence to it. It simply means that it's an illusion the same way a shadow is an illusion of something, okay? If you think that, so the allegory of Plato's cave, the people looking at the cave wall think that that's reality. It's not. It's an illusion. The reality is behind them. A bunch of dudes walking around with stick figures or whatever. That's the reality. The shadow is just a projection of it. Well, this is a projection in the mind of God of itself from this limited little perspective through ignorance, through this modality of psyche, which is really kind of like a kaleidoscope or a funhouse mirror or any analogy you want to give it that makes it distort things, but see yourself through it. Okay, so think of the psyche like a distorted funhouse mirror that only targets a tiny little bit of your body at a time. That's who you are when you think you're this. But your real reality is you're that which is being reflected by the mirror. You're the consciousness experiencing yourself. And your experience of yourself is the reflection. But it's not the reality. Malkuth is the reflection of that, what do you call it? The one above Kether. It's a reflection of
those things. I don't know
those things. Yeah,
I think they call them the 3 veils or something like that. But so, I don't like that term because you've got a veil between the first and second triad. So Malkuth
or Malkut, I guess some people want to say it that way. Malkut is the mirror image of the Ein Sof okay? And that Kether and all of these different little blah, blah, blahs, those are just different dimensions and modalities of the psyche soul. And the lowest ones, this is obviously the incarnate side of you. It's the parts that you think of as being mortal material self. Then you have the soul self. Then you have the grand, big universal, like Eddie was saying before. Like you said, the first thing you run into is your guardian angel, your higher self, your psyche, your individualized psyche, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I don't care. So you have to recognize that this material reality is a projection. It's a hologram. This is why science is starting to think that the simulation theory might hold water. Here's what I find hilarious about the scientific community. Because I watch them like a hawk, because I used to be a hard rational skeptic for the better part of 10, 15 years between when I stopped and I picked it back up again. Hard material skeptic for a while. Hard. I would have mocked the new me. So bad. But I would have schooled the old me, by the way. Science gives me a fucking hilarity boner because I'm watching them completely lost in their own dogma right now. I'm not saying all scientists are bad or dumb. There's quite a few that are brilliant, but they're lost in their own dogmatic views. They've become a religion unto themselves. They are huffing their own farts but I'm watching them running around trying on old metaphysical ideas again because they're lost. String theory doesn't work. Every single thing that they thought was true is not working. It works technologically. You can build computers out of it. You can do all this stuff, but getting to the essence of reality, they reached too high. Science was never meant to replace metaphysics. It was always meant to be, I don't want to put it too like below metaphysics. Within metaphysics was supposed to be science, psychology, all of this shit that is now separated, and metaphysics is treated like religion now by the intelligentsia, and they're ridiculously stupid for doing so.
People forget that epistemology, which thus includes the philosophy of science, is part of metaphysics.
Yes. Why
science
do you think
is metaphysical? That's why it's called metaphysics, because it's the thing you have to do before you do the physics.
Which is why if you go back about 100 to 150 years, every scientist, we're not saying they were theological or something like that, but they had metaphysical understandings. They were Hermeticists, they were Kabbalists, they were all these different things that were metaphysical. Neoplatonists, they were all of these things. So you take Newton, for example. Newton was a motherfucking Hermeticist, alchemist. I think he had a little Neoplatonism, I forget. You kind of can't not have it if you're in his era. So he was a scientist like a distant fifth.
Oh, shit.
He was all these other things, and science was just something he did through that. Science was a way for him to perfect his metaphysics, not the other way around. So modern academia has shot itself in the ass. Yes, we still see you, Eddie. Modern academia has shot itself in the ass because it has decoupled metaphysics and relegates it to just, if you listen to a physicist, they talk down about philosophy like a motherfucker. If you listen to them, they're really obnoxiously conceited. They're really arrogant about this. They talk down to philosophy, thinking philosophy is just, you know,
well, what's fun is that
ideas.
within academia, physicists talk about it all the time, is that the end of the productive lifespan of a physicist occurs earlier than it does in other academic pursuits and even other scientific pursuits, because practically every physicist who's worth a damn goes absolutely batshit nuts. And this is little fun fact for you here. Speaking of the Emerald Tablet, my favorite translation of the Emerald Tablet, it's the one Pope Runyon uses, where the second verse reads, "That which is below is like unto that which is above," yada yada yada. That was Isaac Newton's translation.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of translations. They all kind of say the same thing, but there are some nuances that shift a little bit depending upon which one. The thing is, people want it to be Earth and the stars. You know, astrologers say that's what it means. Well, no, that's just an example of it. It's really microcosm, macrocosm. And it's really one. It's just two different ways of looking at the world.
I actually like to talk about it more in terms of within and without.
Sure.
Right. Specifically because in the Kenneth Grant Universe A, Universe B situation, where so this is the rant I do on left-hand path versus right-hand path, where right-hand path is about looking for God out there. It's about expanding, or it's about reducing the ego until it's gone, right? And all that's left is God, and you become one with everything. Whereas the left-hand path is about looking for God in here. And we, instead of killing the ego, reducing the ego, and shrinking the ego, and I'm saying ego in the good sense, the capital E ego, not the psychological ego or the bad ego that we talk about. It is about expanding your identity until it encompasses everything, right? So, but
because either way, you get critical mass eventually.
Right.
Yep.
You get to the same point. You recognize the fundamental unity of all things.
Yep.
The illusion
Which is why I've
falls
said
away.
you can't be both.
Right.
You can play it both. You can play it either one. But ultimately, you're going to pick one. It's not about limitation here.
Right.
Do you want to join the universe, or do you want to realize the universe is you? Either way, take your pick. You can't be both. There is no middle ground.
It's not like it's not like left-hand path, right-hand path is not like choosing which baseball team you're going to play for. It's one's
That's why it's
being
called a path, guys. It's called a path for a reason.
One's being the pitcher and one's being the catcher. And you can be a pitcher, and then later you can be a catcher, and later you can be a pitcher again, but you can't be a pitcher and a catcher at the same time.
Yep. And I like the Agori comparison as well, because usually on the left-hand path, there is an understanding of no taboo or limited taboo or taboo as an option. It's not about objective taboo. It's about personal, you know, I don't think it's right to do this. Well, that's fine. You're God. You can think that, you know,
right.
That's fine.
And I also couple it with, and this is not, absolutely not part of the left-hand path in India Vamachara, is you have no guru, right? I'm not your fucking guru. I'm just another mad monk on the path. It's like, well, I went up that road and I kind of got the shit kicked out of me by an ogre. So maybe that
you can be a guide. You're not a guru. Right. Like, that's why I don't sit here and call I would call myself, I guess, a teacher, but more of a guide teacher. I'm not interested in having, you know, students fawning over me forever and all that shit. I'd rather be somebody you met along the way. You learned something amazing and went on your way, and you tossed me a few bucks because you thought it was cool. That's how I like to do it. That doesn't mean I won't organize things. It just means that I prefer to see myself that way too. But let's delve a little bit into the Gnostic side now. We're getting a lot of different things. You know, here's one thing I want to say though, and I'm reading people's comments. And it's like, again, people have to recognize that this thing you call reality is a complete and utter illusory projection. People are talking about, I see Matthias talking about karma and how not to be affected by reality or how to affect it. Guys, there is no change. There is no cause. There's no effect. There are reasons. There are consequences. You can say semantically that's the same, but it's not. Causality is a physicalist idea. Causality is two particles bumping together and it causes a reaction you can measure and you can predict.
Bumping particles.
Bumping particles. But the reality is those particles are a projection. They're not the reality. So that means when you see two, let me put it to you like this. Let's pretend we're watching shadow puppets on the wall. Okay. I can make it appear as if my hands are clapping without ever clapping. Right? I don't have to do anything because the shadow, the way it lines up, it's going to look like I'm clapping. They're never touching. Or I can actually clap. So you can have a perception of something, but that doesn't mean it's what it is. It's a very, so this reality is not real reality. This is a projection of reality. So there is no karma. Karma is, when I say there's no karma, I mean karma is an illusion, just like ego is an illusion, just like belief is an illusion. It doesn't mean it's useless. It's a thought form that we use to try to latch onto an idea. That idea is karma is the consequence of egoic action, thinking you can act. That's karma. And so long as you think you can change the world and have influence and affect things, you are now limited to karma. Karma is it's your path, shall we say, from one state of this is how it is to the next. Karma is not, it's not a system of fucking moral punishment or justice. It has nothing to do with that. It is a system of consequence, but not causality. When I say consequence, I mean it like, because you are suffering from avidya or agnosis, depending upon which language you like to use, or just ignorance, because you're suffering from ignorance, you think that to do anything, you have to do something. But you don't. Because what do we know about the divine? Every tradition tells us the same thing. It is timeless, unchanging, dimensionless. Every netty statement you can make. It's literally a meaningless word. Okay? It doesn't mean anything. It just is. So the divine just is, and it doesn't change. So why do we see every good tradition, because there's some that don't say this specifically, every good tradition will tell you that change, if it changes, it's not real. If it's impermanent, it's not real. Impermanence is real because that doesn't change, does it?
The theological term for this is impassibility.
Impassibility.
So God is impassible. He cannot change. And that means he also cannot change his mind.
Yeah. So, but change, mind doesn't change. What changes is perspective. But how could that be if there's no change? Because nothing's changing. It's just a point of view. That's not actual change. It only looks like change. And at the highest level, when you transcend all that and you're at the highest perspective, nothing changes. It's just infinite bliss of just existing. That's heaven. That's what the Christians are talking about when they say heaven. They're not talking about a place in the clouds. That's low heaven. That's like the top part of samsara. That's not the wheel. That's not the hub. The hub is where you'll be very happy in that heaven. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to hate it. It's just, that's not permanent.
No. And this is something, back when I was a Christian, people screwed this up all the time, is that their perception of heaven is usually what in theology we call the intermediate state, meaning it's the heaven that you would be in right now, but that's not the end. The end is not Revelation 1. The end is Revelation 20, where you have what's called the beatific vision, and in Greek Orthodoxy they literally call it theosis. And that's where you get the verse, "We will be like him, for we shall see him as he is." The idea is that you literally become one with the Godhead. You become a participant in the life of the economia of the Trinity, the same way that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost are. Which leads to a really fun debate argument in typically your intro to systematic theology class, which is, so if God cannot change and we become one with God, then we're already there.
You are. It's through ignorance you don't know it. That's the whole point. That's why we have words like agnosis and avidya, because the essence of Malkuth is ignorance. To be in Malkuth is to be ignorant of the entire show. You're only fixated on this shadow down here. Now, I see people saying about, layered reality. Structure is unreal. Anything you can think of like hierarchical structure or layered emanations, that you're still not there yet. You're up, you're higher, you're getting closer. So you're making progress if you have this idea. But that is still a structured idea of the divine. It doesn't fly. The divine has no structure.
Think about a computer for a second, right? So we all understand there's no desktop there, right? And there's no document that's sitting on the desktop, right? And for a long time,
you're using Donald Hoffman's analogy now, which I love. I've used it too.
For a long time, up until the 80s, the first 40 years of computing or so, we didn't have that interface, right? We didn't have that concept.
Right. We didn't have that analogy.
The
closest we had would be like a movie.
We worked with the document as it was on the computer. So, and, the thing is, especially nerds like me, I tend to live on the command line and do lots of stuff from the command line. Right, because it's faster. But the fact of the matter is so why did Xerox invent the GUI? Why did they even do that? right? It sucks up a ton of resources, right? It's not what's happening on the disk. So why do we do this, right? Well,
I think you'd like Donald Hoffman.
The reason we do it is because it's easier, right? We adopt the conceit that there is a desktop and there are documents on that desktop. Well, it's the same thing with reality. Why? So here's the thing, right? So if let's bring it around to Gnosticism, right?
I was just going to say, because before you got onto this, I was actually working us back around to Gnosticism with what I was saying.
So classical Gnosticism, not all versions, but
true, because there's a lot of versions.
Right. Generally, one of the defining features of Gnosticism is, while it is ultimately non-dual, most of them, it is also, practically speaking, very dualistic. But it's not, and it's not a dualism, not just a dualism of, God and the devil, but the main dualism in most forms of Gnosticism is mind and body, right? It's the spirit and it's the material, right? It's the soul and the flesh. And in a lot of versions of Gnosticism, right? Flesh bad, material bad. Yaldabaoth made this as a trap, and it's a prison.
If I can interject, when we say bad too, there's a little bit of a semantical issue.
Yeah,
because you have to remember the Gnosticism we're mostly familiar with it's based on Platonic and Hermetic, some stuff like that. Their idea of evil wasn't our idea of evil. When we say evil, we think of like murder, rape, torture, shit like that, pain. What it meant to a mystic was ignorance. It didn't mean it's not bad. Evil literally just meant a form of ignorance. So
in fact, in the traditional Gnostic, not just Gnostic, but in Kabbalah is essentially Jewish Gnosticism. Okay, so in I think it's in the Treatise of the Left Emanation. It's one of them. Do you know what the fall is?
Well, the fall would just be the ignorance.
Not the fall of Adam, but the fall. The fall.
We're all fallen in the sense that we've forgotten ourselves.
So the moment of the fall of Lucifer, what we would call Lucifer, but they name him Samael, right? Where Samael becomes Yaldabaoth and gets kicked out of heaven in the whole 9 yards. Yahweh looks at him and all he says to him is, Samael, thou art mistaken. Sin is just, it's like you said, it's ignorance, and it's not even deliberate ignorance. It's just being wrong. It's like,
well, it is deliberate ignorance because you are the divine deliberately forgetting. So it's not imposed on you.
Well, in some versions, but a lot of them is we got trapped in this, almost like in very much like the way that they view this in Scientology, which is that this all started as a game, but then it became very, very real because we got tricked into forgetting. But so long story short, one of the defining features of Gnosticism generally is material bad, spiritual good, right? And we're trying to escape this. And you even see this in people like Philip K. Dick, where he talks about, material reality as this black iron prison that he's trying to escape from. And you see that theme over and over again of people trying to escape the physical. Think about, replicants in Blade Runner, right? They're trying to transcend their physicality. But so the difference between my Gnosticism and that Gnosticism is threefold. First of all, the person you've been told, much like with most Gnosticism, the entity that you've been told, and again, understand I'm speaking metaphorically here, something non-dualism. the God that you've been told made everything is the devil, right? Yahweh is the devil. And Samael and Lilith are the ones who actually made everything.
Or Lucifer and Sophia, or
yeah. That's one. Two is that there are two trees, right? Just like they say in the Kabbalah, right? There's the tree of life, right? And then there's what they call the Sitra Achra, which is the other side, right? The Qliphoth. I agree that there are two trees, but it's right in Genesis what those two trees are, right? There's the tree of life. It's not the tree of death. It's the tree of knowledge. And the tree of knowledge is complete. It includes the Qliphoth, because life is not just peace and love and light and order. It is also dark and messy and chaotic. And you before you can have the gnosis, you have to have the ordeal, right? You have to make with the initiatory path of the Eleusinian mysteries. It wasn't just, all right, everybody walk into the cave and take whatever the ancient Greek ayahuasca we were doing is and have this experience. It's you had to prepare yourself. You had to go through this ordeal to really get it's why we have sweat lodges, right? It's extreme physical situations can put you in that state of mind, and so that when you get the ancient Greek ayahuasca or whatever it was,
Kikion,
right? Because as we talk about, Timothy Leary talked about, it's set and setting.
Yep.
So
let's I do want to reduce it a little bit, because I see people talking, because Gnosticism is a confusing subject because there are so many different interpretations. In other words, if you go back, so first of all, Gnosticism isn't a Christian thing originally. It became a Christian thing.
No.
The roots of Gnosticism are definitely before, by quite a large margin, Christianity. Christianity was worked into the Gnostic myth, and Christianity was worked into it so after the Jesus event, and I say the Jesus event because we don't know whether Jesus was a real person or a collection of people or just somebody made up to make Caesar look like a god to people. It's like a lot of different interpretations of this. Most likely someone named that name lived, very likely was a prophet, very likely this and that. I'm not disputing that. What I will say, though, is that after that Jesus event, this event was commented on. There's the scriptures, there's whether they're true or not. Again, they might have been written by Caesar to make them more legitimate to the Jews, okay? Look up Caesar's Messiah, watch the video. It's somewhat compelling. I'm not saying it's completely compelling, but it's somewhat compelling. The Gnostics then, with this Christian event, this Christ event happening and spreading like fucking mind virus everywhere, because Jesus, in my opinion, you don't see it in the Bible. Well, you can. You got to learn how to read it right. It's more prevalent in the Apocrypha, but it's clear that Jesus was a rabbi who must have bumped uglies with some Buddhists or something like that, because it's not hellfire and brimstone Christianity, and it's not classical Judaism. It's Judaism with I don't want to say non-dual twist, but I could. It's Judaism with a Buddhist twist in it, or yes, because non-dualism didn't exist then yet. Shankara hadn't. Well, it did, but it wasn't written down as such. It was a tradition in non-dualism goes back to caveman days, but I'm saying the organized non-duality language didn't happen until after Shankara, as far as we know, which is like 400, 600, I forget. So at the time that the Gnostics that we're talking about arrived, they took their Gnostic ideas and plugged in Christ and all these other things as new metaphors, as new mythologies to relate to. That's all that happened. And there was countless Gnostic orders and individuals and single people, and all of them had their own gnosis and mythology that they worked through. But the goal, the mythology wasn't meant. Here's the thing that most people that I deal with as a teacher guide, your problem. You know what your problem is? You take the mythology too literally and reality too literally.
Yep.
You take it so literally, you're sitting here going, Thorne, how do I speak to Lucifer? There is no Lucifer. Forget it. I that's why I've kind of gotten disappointed and pushed away from some of this stuff a little bit. Because it's infuriating to be like, yes, they exist the same way you exist. And if you're listening to what I'm saying, you understand this D.H. Thorne guy doesn't exist this way. This is a projection, and then I identify with it. Lucifer is a projection of a very specific aspect of the divine, which we personify into this fallen angel character. There's no fucking heaven or God that rebelled against each other and kicked each other's... Now you can see it that way. There's a multiverse of ways you can experience it. You can incarnate literally as Lucifer in heaven, fighting God if you want. It's not that these things aren't possible incarnations. It's that incarnation's an illusion.
And I want to point out, it is useful, in certain operations, to think of things in those terms. A couple of historical notes. First is that while India was not part of the Roman Empire, it was part of Alexander's empire.
I mean, are you kidding? India and the Greeks had so much overlap. The fact that people act like there was no... They have borrowed words with each other, for fuck's sake. Plato's everything. And it's all Egyptian too. Egypt, because of the Greeks. Greek, Egypt, and India. The three of those are the spiritual beating heart. It's another fucking trinity, by the way. This beating heart.
I would add a fourth. Persia.
Which one would... Persia?
Yeah, well, the actual Aryans, the literal historical Aryans were not Germans. They were Persians.
Well, no. Anybody who thinks they were Germans is
the Brahmin class, right?
That doesn't mean they weren't blonde, though, by the way. That's another thing you have to realize. Like, read Robert Seffer, like... You know, blonde hair and blue eyes, or red hair also.
Yes,
that's
red hair was a big
Aryan.
one.
When we say Aryan, I prefer to say Aryan because that's a little bit more. That's Aryan traits, and that's the Brahmin class in India is from Russia, red-headed, pale-skinned motherfuckers that interbred with the Indus Valley people, conquered them.
They were those, I should say the Aryans are the ancestors of both the Persians and the upper castes in India.
For political correctness, we call them the Proto-Indo-Europeans now.
Yes.
Because if you say Aryans, you know, Susan Wojcicki will say, oh, the evil people from World War II. The fact you can't fuck with you can fuck with certain swastikas, right? There are ones you can get away with, like if you use the Tibetan ones and all, you're fine. But it's like, the fact that you can't even appreciate its original meaning because of what happened pisses me off. Like people say, you shouldn't use it because it, you know, don't use that one.
You're right. Of the many things that I remain eternally pissed off at the Nazis for, this is pretty far down on the list. But the fact that I can't get like an Othala rune tattooed on my skin without people making assumptions about me.
It's very frustrating.
They didn't just ruin the symbols of my people. They salted the earth. It's going to be 1,000 years before people can use those.
I think it'll be sooner or later. I think it'll be like 3 or 4 more generations. It'll be fine. You know, I mean, look at the youth today. They think Hitler's funny. They don't get triggered by him. You know, like whereas my kid's like, oh, I wanted. My friend bought one of Hitler's forks or something. Like, what the fuck? No, it's a meme to them. They think it's funny. They don't take it seriously because they don't have that generational memory we have. Like to us, it's like, those are the bad guys, bro. You know, what are you doing?
Well, that's because, you know, I had I had teachers in college that had numbers tattooed on their arms.
Exactly, right. We have a generational memory they don't have.
Right.
Like, look at Genghis Khan. We're sitting here like, Genghis Khan was cool. Motherfucker, if you lived during that time, you would have been like, he's the devil. You wouldn't have thought he was cool.
Well, and the reason why there's so many people in Europe who are direct descendants from Genghis Khan isn't because he was nice. It's because...
I like how you said that. It wasn't just because he was a lady killer. He was.
Right. He was. The other historical note is that, and this is hard to convey, obviously, when we're speaking, but when you see written capital G, Gnosticism, that generally refers to the Gnostic brand of Christianity.
Yep.
Because Gnostic nobody who wasn't a Gnostic. So like the Mithraics and the people who were not, we would call Gnostics. The Gnostics that you're talking about, none of them would have called themselves that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure
they would have called it. Yeah, they wouldn't have called
Gnostics
themselves that.
Would have called themselves that either. But
no, exactly. There was nothing called Gnosticism back then.
But then again, Christians didn't call themselves Christians until after. It's a Yankee Doodle thing. The Romans used it as an insult.
Yep.
And they adopted it.
That's the story of most esoteric stuff. It happens that way a lot. We call the thing not by what it. So for example, Hermeticism. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Well, or alchemy. That's a better example. Alchemy. It means from Kemet, from Egypt. It's not. So the word chemistry, we don't, it means Egyptree. That means, we're talking about something that came from Egypt. Mm-hmm. That's so the chemists of ancient Egypt, I don't know what they called themselves, but they wouldn't have called themselves a chemist, because that'd be like saying I'm an American or something. They were priests. Right. And
specifically the priests that did the mummification.
Kemet meant the soil was dark and earthy around the Nile. Mm-hmm. That's basic. So you're talking about dark earth. When you say Kemet, when you're saying alchemy, you're talking about the people of the dark earths, from the people of the dark earth. That's literally what you're saying. This is why etymology is so important if you're really going to do this kind of study. Etymology is a big deal. Like learning the word person means persona, which means mask. That's like a little hint that is still left in our language that people used to know. And this is stuff that's lost, because think of it this way. Do you put in your book describing history how a light switch works? It's just presumed everybody understands it. So there's things you don't put in your mythology or in your language or in your conversations or in your literature, because it's presumed everybody understands it. You don't have to tell. So if I write in my book, I was looking at the sky, you don't say the sky was blue. It's just understood that the sky's blue. Well, what if that's forgotten for some reason? What if, because of 10,000 years of bullshit, you forgot some part of it? Because it was like Eddie said with the unfortunate way. And thank you, Tyr, for the song, mocking that. Salting the earth when it comes to traditions, you can lose things, and then you have to find it again. And it's my belief that you go back far enough, religion was non-dual or monist or something equivalent, their version of it, however they would have put it. And it devolved into this bibbity bobbity boo hocus pocus bullshit. This is what I was getting at. Not every single, a large majority of people, including popular occultists running around out here, are still materialistically bound fools that take these things literally, theistically. They're no better than religious morons. I respect them as people, but their work is, they don't understand the essence behind it. That doesn't mean they don't do good work. You can still do great work and not know how to use, you don't have to know how to program a computer to make a good website or to use it effectively. So I don't mean to demean them that way. I'm simply saying that it is ultimately a dead end because they're not leading towards, I'm not saying like I'm great because of it. I'm criticizing this mentality that people worship Satan, worship Lucifer, worship this as externalized things. All you're doing is reifying that ego. And that brings us back to Gnosticism, because the understanding is that Yahweh, Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, whatever your word for it is, that is an externalization of your own ego. Because the bigger your ego is, the bigger the ego outside you must be to conflict with. Okay? So a dualistic person requires a self and an other. Now that self, the smaller the self in your mind, the smaller the other has to be. The bigger the self you think of yourself, the bigger the bad guy or thing controlling you or God above you has to be to contain, control, or otherwise abuse you potentially. So to save you or abuse you, it's got to be bigger than you, right? So the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, those are projections, not... This is the thing. If you take the mythology literally, you're never going to get it. If you're sitting here going, there's a monad, by the way, this is the reason, one of my problems with Gnosticism is it's an unfortunate...
oh, well, that's not useful. Did
No,
the stream see that?
Yeah.
All right, whatever.
Yeah, we'll probably end on the soon side.
I just told you.
We're on a good roll though, so maybe we'll keep going. Yeah, so it's not... Stop taking the mythology literally as if there's something called a monad that squirts out these different aeons of being, and then these aeons are wonderful till you get to Sophia, and she decides not to screw Lucifer like she's supposed to. She decides to emanate by herself and creates an evil thing. Okay, what does Sophia mean? Let's take these things more symbolically. Sophia means wisdom.
Philosophy, the love of wisdom.
The love of wisdom. So wisdom... How did wisdom give birth to this bullshit? Because through ignorance, Yaldabaoth is the mortal ignorance that causes incarnation. It is wisdom. To seek wisdom is to seek the truth. So when Sophia emanated Yaldabaoth, because she didn't do it with the inspiring light of her partner, Lucifer. What does that Lucifer mean? It's the light bringer. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means an end to ignorance, doesn't it? So wisdom in darkness gives birth to the Yaldabaoth ego. When Lucifer and Sophia are come back together, there is enlightenment and then transcendence. So this is where people get screwy. They think of it literally, and you're never, ever, ever gonna fucking get it. And I say that with a little bit of venom because it's frustrating to me. Because I don't mean this nasty to any of you. I'm venomous towards the problem itself. I'm passionately angry about it because
let me give you the version of that pisses me off, right?
Okay.
And we hit on it a little bit and before with the pyramid discussion, but it's people. Okay, so both flat earthers and
I like where you're going because it's pretty comparable to the
right scientism type people will say things like the Bible says the earth has corners, therefore it must be flat, right? And I want to strangle both of them because, like, you assholes, you really think that it's just the flat earthers are like, well, you know, the Bible says the earth is flat, so it must be flat. Whereas the scientism people are, Bible says the earth was flat. Weren't those ancient people just so fucking stupid? No, they weren't.
Nope.
You know, we knew the earth was round. We knew the earth was round back in hunter-gatherer days.
Yep.
Do you know why nobody fucking talked about it? Because everybody fucking knew the earth.
It's the light switch analogy. That's why I use the light switch analogy, because it's like we don't explain. If you read a novel about something, they say a guy turned over, switched on a light. 10,000 years from now, when you just literally wink to yourself and lights turn on, people won't know what that was.
And when I think it was Archimedes, when he did his thing where he proved the earth was round, he wasn't proving the earth was round. That wasn't a subject of contention, because sunrises and sunsets don't happen if the earth isn't round. The motions of the stars don't make any fucking sense if the earth isn't round, right? What Archimedes did that made him so famous, other than the density, solving the density problem, is that when he did his little experiment and kind of invented trigonometry a little bit, what Archimedes' big thing was, he figured out how far around it was without having to actually go all the way around.
I mean, if we believe the whole thing that the pyramid is built with this symbolically contained in it, they knew when they built the pyramids. If we believe that, you know,
also,
you can go.
Isaac Newton wrote a really, really good book tying. He was the first guy to do the thing where you take the measurements of the pyramids, like, and align them to the stars, and then compare that to the Book of Revelation and compare that to the history of the church, and you get a prediction about how the earth ends. Although it only works in English imperial units. Isaac Newton kind of missed that one. Like, well,
that's the funny thing when people are saying, don't forget the size measurements back to ancient Egypt. There was some close corollaries to what we call a foot and all this other stadia or whatever. So it's like, you can get close. But anyway, going back to my rant though, like, so I am one of the reasons you don't see me doing demon reviews so much, one of the reasons why I've taken a different tactic, is because I believe that my work before was feeding ignorance. It wasn't helping people through it. I was basically enabling people to continue on with their dum-dum. Okay. I was helping flat earthers think it's flat. Because unfortunately, when I talk about spirits, I know what I'm talking about. I know, it's like we were talking about the light switch. I don't have to explain to myself. Spirits aren't, the way I like to put it is, they're no more or no less real than we are. But if you understood how unreal you are, you'd realize what a stupid thing it is to ask if the spirits are real. They're no more or no less real than Superman, and neither are you. Okay? If you can realize that, you are light years ahead of most of the people, even the ones sitting here having YouTube channels influencing the whole community. Okay. So most people don't know this. And it drives me up a goddamn wall, because I didn't get into this to get into a fucking religion where I worship demons or gods or anything else, or think the world is flat or anything else. I already transcended that illusion. So when I come here talking about these things, I talk about them from this understanding that they are projections. They're valuable projections, like Eddie likes to say. They're bullshit, but they're useful bullshit. But they're only useful because you still don't quite get it. So you need stepping stones. That's theurgy, by the way. When you're using spirits and you're going through dimensions of things, that's theurgy. You're literally taking a god, finding in that god something that you either want or you recognize in yourself, and you try to reduce that separation you perceive between you until there is none. Then you go to the next one. This is why Kabbalah, the planets and the gods within, you got all the planets there. It's all astrotheurgy or some form of theurgy. That's every time. The gods, the stars, the planets, they're all metaphors for something that you cannot see. That's the ultimate divine. So people need to pull their head out of their collective ass on this. If you ever, you literally have to become a kind of atheist, not a skeptic atheist that doesn't believe in anything.
A Buddhist atheist.
What's that?
A Buddhist atheist.
A Buddhist atheist. A Buddhist will say a prayer to spirits too.
Yeah.
Okay. But they recognize that those spirits, they don't see them as gods that create or cause. They're just other reflections of the self. Yep. So
they're a different mirror in the web, but they're still a mirror. A different
drop of dew in Indra's web.
Yep.
So you guys have to get out of that. And I mean that to a lot of you guys. Like when you guys are asking questions, I'm reading them. And again, I don't mean any negativity towards the persons that are asking, ever. Because you're like me. I get frustrated with the questions, not your questions per se, but I mean, I get frustrated with the attitudes. So it's one reason why I'm kind of like, Left Hand Path is cool as a practice, but I'm kind of tired of the community because it's basically all just heavy metal edgelords that are worshiping things that they take seriously, which is fine as a as a stepping stone of progress, but they just took Christianity and put demons in it. A lot of them.
Whereas I don't know about you, but what I'm doing is I'm taking Agori left-hand Agori Vamachara Tantra, right? And I am, instead of just taking Christianity and then playing for the other team, I'm taking this other thing that has really been really useful for a lot of people. But because I was a Christian for 40 years and I grew up in this and I took this really fucking seriously and went to seminary and taught fucking Sunday school and shit. Okay. Shiva's never going to have that gut punch that Lucifer does.
Right.
Never.
Right.
Ever.
Exactly. And, but at some point you got to transcend that too.
Oh yeah.
Which is, well, I'm saying that like I'm talking about myself. Yeah. Because having done that, that's now a different shadow now. Before the shadow was, I want to do it that way. Now the shadow is, I want to avoid it because it's wrong, or at least it's wrong to take it that seriously.
Right.
Right. So now I'm in a phase where it's like, don't even fucking talk to them.
Well, and I'm kind of, we talked about this a little bit. I'm kind of the same way, where I kind of want to come up with a version of this, of everything that I do. That is devoid entirely of all that context. Called,
I mean, that's why I'm creating this thing called manifestationism. I'm trying to take out all the middlemen, give you the essence in a non-dual framework, and then I will plug back in a model, but it's not the model. It's just one way of doing it. And you can put any spirit hierarchy and pantheon you want. Any form of magic you want to do, hedge Wicca you want to do, don't fucking care. It all works. Anything, you can plug anything into manifestationism and it's going to be good.
I also like the approach from, I can't remember the author, Advanced Magic for Beginners, right? Advanced Magic for Beginners works like this. He's a chaos magician. And this is like one of the really seminal works like this. I think this might predate Liber Null. It doesn't predate Carol, but it predates the publication of Liber Null.
Well, some people say it's Osmond Spare that started it, but other people say that he just started the sigil magic and that Peter Carroll really started the chaos thing.
Spare is to chaos magic, but the Golden Dawn was to Thelema.
Okay, fair.
So literally what he does is he takes basically the Golden Dawn curriculum, right? Which starts with, here's our magical alphabet. It's Hebrew, right? But instead of that, literally what he has is he has a chapter on, here's what a magical alphabet is and what it does and why we need one or why it's useful. And then gives you an exercise that is literally fill in the blank, make your own magical alphabet.
Which is what I put in Become the Maelstrom. I didn't even know these guys exist, so I was on the same wavelength.
And it's the same thing that Pope Pete was talking about with the alphabet of desire. It's creating your own. Although in his case, you're talking about not just creating your own magical alphabet. You're creating your own divination system. You're creating Pope Pete. One of the very first exercise in the initiatory system that he came up with is, I want you to go home and I want you to make a physical representation of the universe, right? However you understand it, and figure out a way to turn that into a divination system, right? Make your own tarot, make your own runes, make your own astrology, right? But one thought I wanted to make sure I finish, because this touches on the liberation point that we were talking about today or yesterday, whenever it was. The main critical difference between my Gnosticism and a lot of other Gnosticisms, to harp on that flesh is bad, material universe is bad thing, is flesh is not a prison unless you think it is.
The prison's in your mind.
Right.
That's the only place it is. And it's not really a prison. It's ignorance. It's built out of ignorance. It's not built out of anything real.
To use I won't use the Matrix analogy.
But it's a good analogy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, it doesn't work for my metaphor.
Okay.
I'll use the black iron prison, right? The prison is real. The cage is real. And you and me and everybody else, we're not born into it, but we very early on are put in a cage. I don't disagree with sort of conventional Gnosticism on this. Where I disagree with them is, one, you built the cage yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, the blueprints you built it from were handed to you by the church, by the state, by your parents, by your culture, by a lot of other things. But you built it with your own hands.
And they got it from you before.
Right. And the other thing is, there's no lock on that door. And the only thing you have to do is stand up and walk out. That's it.
Mm-hmm. You can actually
do. It's not when you do. I'm not talking about escaping the prison of the flesh. I'm talking about escaping the prison of your mind. Because as soon as you do that, the flesh is no longer your prison. It is your playground. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly.
We wanted this.
Right. You can dream lucidly.
Yes. We were put here to enjoy this. We want to be here. So be here and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And to lead around to the fact, too, that especially people who tend to talk about things from the perspective we tend to talk about them from, right? That sort of ultimate reality, big reality thing, is that a lot of people tend to get really down on people who do practical enchantment for, love, money, whatever else it is. Fuck it, do it. I do it.
You just have to do it the right mentality, in my opinion.
Right.
If your mentality is it's a vending machine or a genie in a bottle,
it's not going to work for you anyway.
I mean, it may. That's the irony. It still might work.
Right.
But magic is okay. So let me answer Patchy. Patchy, is anything real? Yes, but only in the sense that nothing is real. So anyway,
define real and give three examples.
And give me 3 examples. So I forgot my train of thought. I was going somewhere and what did I say right before I said Patchy? What was my last sentence?
I don't know.
Roughly.
That just ran off the end of my brain buffer. So.
Oh shit. Guys, what was my last sentence before I acknowledge Patchy?
The prison, flesh is a playground. Yeah, I'm saying what I was saying, hoping it'll reprompt you. I have to do this with Chat DHT too.
We're getting close. What the hell was I saying right before? I had a thought, and it was a good one, and it was something I've been trying. This is the problem with ADHD, by the way. That's why I interrupt people so much, because if I don't, it just goes away.
Yeah, same.
So it's never because I'm rude and don't like you. It's literally, it's my own fault.
While you're thinking about it, I will illustrate too that the reason our conversations tend to take such weird rabbit trails is because an essential skill you have to do any of this is what I call thinking sideways. So most of the time we think this way, front to back. You need to think this way.
I like to invert it all. I like to go backwards on everything. I like to invert everything I think about from the opposite. If I think I'm moving, I have to think, no, everything is moving and I'm watching it move.
And you need to focus less about opening your third eye and more on opening your third sphincter.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. I'll thank you, Patchy. Patchy remembers magic is not a genie about it. Okay. So results-based magic is an ego trap 4,000 billion miles deep because it will work and you'll think that's what it's for. Mm-hmm. The reason it works has nothing to do with cause and effect. You're not causing something to happen. You're not bending space and time around you. You're centering yourself in a new paradigm of reality. But why does it work? Well, it doesn't actually work. The candles don't do shit. Okay? And it's not about getting you what you want. The secret is, if you are aligned with your divinity, then the divine's intention will manifest miraculously. And you will be part of that manifestation as its facilitator. So the magic happens not when you do the ritual. The magic happens when you go, I think I should do a ritual for this.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you took a fork in the timeline, is when you said, I should do this. That was that inspiration, that little, like a drop on your head of water. Bloop. That was the moment magic happened. Everything else was just you following a pattern. If you are properly aligned with the divine, then your intuition to do the ritual will be the right one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not aligned with the divine, meaning yourself, stop thinking of the divine as an external God. Realize that that's all you. That seed of inspiration, that spontaneous, intuitive, I should do a ritual. It occurs before desire does. If you wait for desire to trigger you to do it, that's ego now. You're not going to get it. It may work, you may get lucky, but you're not really attuned to what's happening. So we do the rituals, we do the spells, not because they cause anything to happen. In Become the Maelstrom, I wrote it as a celebration of a thing that's already meant to be. Mm-hmm. That's a poetic way of saying the divine already wills it. And you're just riding that to its outcome. So if you sit here going, I'm going to do magic because I need money, you're better off just getting a job. Mm-hmm. If that's really what you think.
Or do both.
Well, yes, because that's the point. Mm-hmm. You, the ritual, the spell. See, the people are going to say, Thorne, you're saying magic doesn't work. Oh, no, my dear.
Oh, no.
I'm saying magic works before all that. Magic is before that happens. Before you do the ritual or the spell, magic already happened.
The thing you do in ritual, just like the job, is a consequence of the magic.
Right. It's not the cause of it. And magic is not a force. Mm-hmm. It's not a superpower. Mm-hmm. Magic is Western yoga or Western tantric yoga. It's all magic and sorcery really is. When you externalize it as a tool to get what you want, yes, you can have success with that. But ultimately, you're kidding yourself. You're like in the beginning of The Simpsons, when little Maggie's steering the steering wheel and mom's driving the car. Maggie will throw the, if you remember that opening sequence and they show Maggie going, and the car goes left and then the car goes right. And it looks like Maggie's driving, but it's really Marge. That's what you're doing. You're Maggie. When you're doing these rituals, thinking that you're doing the magic to get what you want, you think you're in control, the ego. The ego has no fucking control. The ego is a puppet on the end of a fucking cosmic arm. Mm-hmm. It's the cosmic arm that's doing it. And it's not doing it. It's going there. It's imagine a choose your own adventure of infinite length that has every story in it imaginable. And you are that story reading itself and you're choosing which new page to go to. And it's not a choice like I must go this way or I must go that way. It's the intention of the divine to see that story play out that way.
I got it. Holy shit. Yeah. This happened. You're watching Gnosis happen live. Okay. Stick with me here. The universe is a large language model. Okay.
Someone's been using ChatGPT a lot.
and your true will is the neural network that's figuring out what the next word is.
Okay. All right. I can feel where you're going with that.
I also want to respond to the comment about LHP people substituting Hell Daddy for Sky Daddy. One, you're absolutely right. Drives me nuts. Second, Asmodeus is kinky Hell Daddy, and I will die on this hill.
You can still do that reversal so long as you recognize it's just a bullshit thing. This is why I have more respect for theistic Satanists, believe it or not, than I do theistic ones. No offense to my theistic fans, but I have more respect for the atheistic Satanists because I'm not into that religion bullshit.
I mean, you know how, like, I'm probably even more skeptical than you are on a lot of stuff. I don't think that's really fair, but that's how I'm perceived, and I know it is. I'm not so much a skeptic as I am the the departments need to be kept separate. And I get annoyed. I get annoyed when physicists wander into the philosophy department and start banging their dick on the table when they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Just as much as I get annoyed by, Wiccans wandering into the physics department and trying to pitch quantum woo.
Well, I'm the same way as you in that department.
Right.
It ruffles my feathers when I see assholes trying to use physics to validate magic, like magic is a quantum force or something. That makes my anger boner get big, because I came from a hard skeptic position.
Anger boner.
I came from a hard skeptic position for a while, and I can't stand people go, magic is just consciousness in quantum fields causing things. You're not causing things. You've already lost the script. You don't get it. You're already materialistic, and you're never, until you transcend that materialistic delusion. Look, science still works in the delusion. Science just another shade of bullshit that we use to relate to things. It's not wrong in that way. It still makes planes fly. It's just that it's not. If you guys understand, the hard thing is I can't take what I know and put it into words because they're confusing. If you could see reality through the reference that I'm looking at it, you'd go, holy shit. So it does work, just not that way. Yeah, exactly. There's no way to describe it. Anyway, Patrick says, in my experience, what people call gods or spirits are in us, through us, and all around us. These are just aspects of life itself. And if you're saying life as the Tao or life as the divine, then you're exactly right. They're all manifestations of the same essence. And that essence is the divine. There's no separation between you or those spirits. This is not just cute little new age slogans. This is ancient wisdom that when applied, especially through true gnosis, you don't have to do rituals anymore. This is why I joke around and say, I can do a powerful ritual literally by pissing in the toilet a certain direction. It has nothing to do with what you do. Nothing. But it has to resonate with your psyche, whatever you're doing. If you believe, and when I say believe, I mean, I shouldn't say believe. If your psyche resonates with a certain style of material belief or material expression or cultural expression, so for example, for some people, even if you master this thing I'm writing and you get it, you might still not be able to have success unless you use Wiccan methods, because that is magic to you. That is what magic is for you. For other people, it's these silly little radionics tables. Or for other people, it's using a tarot card, meditating on it, going, I send death at my enemy. All of it is fine. None of that is wrong. So you can have your sky daddy and your basement daddy so long as you recognize that they are metaphors, or that they are allegories, or that they are stepping stones or interface. So Lucifer is a file on your desktop.
It's an API.
It's just an intermediary, because you can't see the blinding light of truth clearly. You need that thing in the way. Otherwise you're going to go, because you're still enjoying the show.
Well, that's the thing people miss about Plato's analogy of the cave, is they stop too soon, which is the guy gets out of the cave and walks out into the sunlight and he can't do anything. Right? He's blind. He can't, and eventually he has to turn around and go back to the cave, but he knows they're shadows now. He knows they're puppets. And that's the difference. The end result is not, I suddenly transcend and, hurling lightning bolts out my ass.
And it's not that you can't. It's just that you're already doing this the way you're doing it, because that's what your intention is for it to be. If you intend to, so if you're here in this paradigm of reality where Eddie and I are at, which is fairly materialistic despite our knowledge of the higher realm, you're probably not going to be able to fly by sitting on a broomstick and kicking it 3 times and saying giggity bobbity boo. Okay. It's not going to work.
It's a game.
But somewhere, or I shouldn't say somewhere.
Yeah.
When I say somewhere, I mean this not literally. I mean this because it's the only way to say it. Somewhere in the multiverse, though, that does happen. So somewhere you can manifest that. But if your psyche is pinned here, because your psyche exists as like, okay, here, here's, let me see if I can do it real quick. Don't let me lose my train of thought here, Eddie. I just need a single sheet of shit paper. Something I can, yeah, this will probably do. What's this? Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay. Ignore the shitty piece of paper. So you have a shitty piece of paper here. Imagine that this is eternity. This is everything. This is the divine, okay? So that's your psyche, okay? It's like a whole. It's not a thing. It's an ignorance of everything, okay? And all you see is this piece. That's your psyche. You see it's cut out of the whole. But it's still there. So let's put it back in. It's still there. But just remember that little metaphor. It's like a cutout. It's not really separated. It's not really cut out. It's just highlighted, okay? So what appears in that psyche, though, look at the shape of that. That's a square, right? I cut a little square out. Mm-hmm. So that means I can't see anything but square. So long as my psyche is square shaped, I can't see circles or other shapes. To see other shapes, my psyche's got to change, or I've got to let go of it. Psyche is soul or ego. When I say soul, I don't mean the whole soul. I mean, it's the individuated soul. You've got to let go of your idea of isolation, separation. You've got to rejoin. You got to bring the paper back together. This is gnosis, by the way. You got to bring the paper back together. You got to heal that wound. You got to restore your ignorance to wisdom. Once you experience and hold a state of gnosis, now you're returned to source. You're in this deep level of transcendental bliss. While you're there, that's like taking the needle off the record and you can just go wherever you want. Okay. But so long as you're still attached to this psyche, you can go there temporarily, but you're going to come back. And I've done it now a whole bunch of times. I've actually there's no technique to it. Everybody's different. I wish I could just be like, do this and it'll do that for you. That can't happen. Okay. Everybody's different. Every incarnation's different. For me, it's a combination of meditation and a little bit of chemognosis with a little bit of nothing heavy, just a little bit of, a little bit of good stuff. It just helps me get deeper than regular meditation usually can, because my ADHD makes it, I can clear my brain, no problem. It's that getting past certain things without that is a little hard. So when I do that, I can skip right over the hang-up stages and go into deep bliss, or I can actually astral travel much more easily. Okay. But my understanding is what I'm seeing is real. So if I go into an astral dimension where I'm seeing, I don't know, imagine anything you can imagine is real. It's not that it's not real. When I say it's real, I mean, it has an essence in the divine that is its source. So if you imagine, two elephants, like, that can fly and they're the universe. Well, somewhere in the multiverse, that's what it is. Any random assortment of things you can imagine. The reason why this is true is because remember what I said, cause and effect is an illusion. So that means there's no reason why it can't be that way. There's no, you could say, well, there can't be a square circle. Wrong, there can be. Simply for the fact that there's no rules here. There's just potentialities, and there's no limit to the potential. So anything you can imagine, you can view, at least temporarily, especially if you hit a deep state of gnosis, you can like psychedelically go there and experience it and then come back and be like, well, that was just my imagination. That was just a trip. That was just hallucination. That was a vision. No, you fool, you really did go there. This is the essence of what Castaneda was talking about in the first book, when he had that scene where he takes the really hard shit and he becomes a bird, and he asks Don Juan, what happened to my body? And Don Juan's like, what are you talking about? You don't have a body. And it sounds like he's giving him a runaround. No, he's giving him the whole show. That one scene, if you already had a non-dual realization, you read that scene and you go, this motherfucker knew what he was talking about. Because you don't have a body. You don't, when you were a bird, you were a bird. Well, I thought it was just a vision. It's not just a vision. Your whole life is just a vision, my friend.
Eliminate the word just from your vocabulary.
Yeah, I like that. I've said, I think, wasn't it me who made that a thing?
This is one of us.
I said it like, not to take credit for everything, but I said it a bunch of years ago because I'd say, people would say, oh, it's just your imagination. I'm like, get the just out of there. Just doesn't belong there at all.
Well, from a non-dual perspective, we are but
everything's just the imagination.
We are but two cheeks on the ass of God.
That's right.
And the cheeks clappeth in the void, are heard not. Somebody said, I want to make sure I put this in too, that they like ritual. I do too. We forget, like, so. Yeah, you know, there's a point where like the general learning curve of magic that I see over and over again, at least among people who grok it and really get it, is everybody starts out the same way. Getting laid, getting paid, right? I want money and I want sex. Mm-hmm. And
I mean, those are your hangups. You got to get through them first. And one way to do it is to, you know.
And it's one of those things where, advice to any beginners out there, all right? The easiest manifestation you're ever going to make is your first one. The hardest one is the second one.
Mm-hmm. The first one's usually a doozy too.
Oh, like, yeah. Oh,
and this counts even if you take a while off magic like I did. The very first time when I was a kid and the very first time when I came back was like, oh boy, like it was like an avalanche, because it's like
my first one.
Sound like we're talking about sex.
My first sigil. It was a sigil magic, just on a Post-it note, like sitting in a network closet at work because I was waiting for something to reboot, or like I'd been reading about this shit for so fucking long. I'm like, you know what? This is total bullshit, but I'm going to give it a try. And I even did the one from the book, which was, I will see a woman wearing red shoes. Right. And by the end of the day, because that was a big thing in the book, which you have to be specific with a cutoff time. So I did it and like, okay, kind of half-assed my way through it. I mean, I already knew self-hypnosis and shit because, you know, anxiety patient. So you learn those things. And I walked out of that network closet and I saw 8 women wearing red shoes in like the quarter-mile walk from where I was to my office.
When you know you've made it, when I can't tell you this story because I was sworn not to. by the situation, the being, the self that I swore I wouldn't. It's like, it's supposed to be just for me because I'm a little exhibitionist when it comes to my work. I don't tell you guys everything, but I tend to not overshare, but there are times it's like, what do you keep secret, you know?
Well, and that's, speaking of exhibition,ism, one of the main reasons I don't videotape my rituals is because I'm usually naked. So.
Ooh, yeah. Well, that's different. You know you've made it when you can look at something and just say, it's going to do this. It's going to feel like you predicted it and like you caused it equally. You're not going to be able to tell the difference. That's when you know you've made it. You don't need a sigil. You don't need a ritual. You don't need anything. You can literally just go, that's about to fall. Mm-hmm. What do you mean it's about to fall? It's perfectly stable and about to fall. Did you make that happen? Or did you predict it? Mm. Remember that scene in The Matrix where he walks in and he said, and the Oracle says, watch out for the, what was it, the plant? Mm-hmm. And then he knocks it over promptly. And then you know, I forget how it went, but did I call it? Did you do it because I said it? Or did I say it because you were going to do it?
Well, and the thing I wanted to, so once you finish that sort of first phase and then you move on to sort of the enlightenment phase, although some people do that third, not second, I don't know. I tended to do it second, but at a certain point, and I think this is true for you and it's true for everybody, the phrase you hear a lot is you stop doing magic and you be the magic. Mm-hmm. like, yeah, sometimes I do rituals and sometimes I do stuff, to try to make things happen. Not make things happen, but you know what I mean.
Right. To see the change you want to be.
Yeah, at a certain point. So why do, if that's the case, why do I bother doing ritual? It's, well, part of it is it's fun. Part of it is, a good way of putting it is, there's that holy shit moment. There's call it maybe like 3 stages, right? There's that, you do that first thing, or you have that first experience where you're like, holy shit, this is real. And you're like really excited, and this is amazing, and da 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 da. And then you have the second one, which is, holy shit, this is real. And, that's typically like if you're a Lilith devotee like me.
I'm going to say that holy shit moment never stops.
Yeah.
It keeps
and you
happening.
have them. You keep having them.
Yep.
But then sort of you reach this point where it's like, and I don't know why, but this struck me as like a big revelation when it happened, even though it's the simplest thing in the world, is there's the how far can I push this factor.
And that was my downfall.
Yeah. And then there's the that time I threw a hex at an asshole neighbor and their house burnt down. That was kind of like, okay, all right, I'm done with that. This gun is in fact loaded.
I know, that's why when people who are like, I like doing curses, but we should ban guns, I go, should I just punch you now, or do you want to schedule it or something? Because that's
As a special exclusive, I will now explain the joke I make about that all the time, that that apparently goes over a lot of people's heads, which is, for the most powerful curse I know involves a talisman of lead and copper suffused in an incense of
suffumigation of sulfurous compounds,
carbon, sulfur, of like charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter. That's gunpowder.
You must place it in the holy tube of
yes.
of
I call it my high velocity hex.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I've got bullets that have sigils on them. So
yeah,
woe be to those.
My favorite sigil for a bullet is an X.
Mm-hmm. You mean just in that little bit of the just right on the tip there,
right there.
Well, mine are plastic inserted, so I don't need to do that. So it's already there. I sprung for the expensive stuff. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I know that trick too. The other good one is if you want to take your shotgun shell, your shotgun incense, and pour wax down the certain type, you can make a what is called a spiritual slug shooter. Anyway, Patchy gave us some more money. He says, I have a serpent sky mommy that takes on many forms, LOL. And he says, I'm making up a square circle right now, LOL. And he says, I will receive free cheese and booze by the end of the day. He probably will. If you do, please mention it on the Discord, Patchy.
I don't know what time zone you're in, but
I think he's Central, if I had to guess. Patchy, are you Central?
If you're Central, you've got like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But the thing I keep forgetting the point and rabbit trailing myself is that we forget that this is an art, and
it's literally
there is an art. Yes, there is
not
nothing,
a science. I mean, there's science in art.
Yes, I have a whole grid diagram I'll do, but that's like a whole rant in and of itself. So
that's another pet peeve of mine, because those people who say magic is a science, they tend to try to they think that it's inferior to science, and they're trying to equate it to science. It's literally an ego trip for them. Really, science is below magic, by the way, just so you know.
Well, and I'm guilty of it right now. But people who say magic is just a science, get rid of just, or magic is just art. But then if you just say magic is science or magic is art, whenever people say things like that, that's usually an indicator to me that they don't understand what either of those things are. Like if magic is science, then you don't understand what magic is and you don't understand what science is. Rupert Sheldrake in Sex Secrets of the Black Magicians Exposed has a really good 2x2 matrix of the four things: magic, religion, science, and art, where he explains why magic is none of those things. It's its own thing over here off to the side, but it's related to them, the other ones, in the same way that each one of them is related to the other ones. But look at someone like Behemoth X. I don't know if he's here, but whatever.
He hasn't been here in a little while, actually. I wonder if he's doing good.
But look at someone like Behemoth X, right? Does he need to do all of that to get the shit done that he wants to get done? No.
I think so. But
do I appreciate the shit out of the fact that he puts in that much effort? Yeah, because he's creating.
Why do you think I made a ritual room? It's right. You know, there must be artistry involved. Yeah. This is, I mean, I say magic in the practical sense is an art form. Mm-hmm. Magic in the philosophical sense, it's metaphysics. It's something else. But in its practiced form, it's closer to art than. That doesn't mean there's not science in it. Look, you do experiments in art too. Like people say, oh, it's scientific because we do experiments. No, science is a specific thing. It's a specific tool with specific parameters. You literally cannot apply science to magic. If you do, trust me, you're going to be very fucking disappointed. I challenge anybody who thinks magic functions like science does to replicate the same fucking exact outcome twice in a row. I challenge you, do the exact same ritual, the exact same way, and get it to work the same way exactly every time, the way you can make literally anything else in science happen. Magic is not science in that regard. Science only works. I mean, what is the exact, I forget the exact, definition of the scientific method, but magic doesn't fit there. It never will. Okay. But that doesn't mean you don't do experiments.
No.
Well, you do experiments in art too. Have you ever doodled? You're experimenting when you're doodling.
So where I work, with the artists, so I work in the Fine Arts College. So you know what the research component for tenure and promotion is for the faculty in an arts college? It's doing art. Their peer review is getting a gallery showing. For theater people, it's literally being paid in a union show. So their peer review is being a member of the union and being able to maintain their membership in the union.
Yeah. So do not try to mix. When I say don't mix, I don't mean you can't use scientific principles or something. What I'm saying is that magic is not science. It's not scientific. You can do experiments, and there's plenty of validation that happens there, both positive and negative validation. You can you are meant to test. In fact, magic is a let's put magic in its proper place. Magic is a test to see if you're aligned with the divine or not. If you are, it will manifest flawlessly. If you're not, it may manifest but not exact, or it may manifest and be a monkey's paw, or it may not manifest, but it's always working. Magic always works if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, when it doesn't manifest, now you have. So when magic works but doesn't get what you want, it usually reveals to you the reason why. It usually reveals to you your psychic blockage, your whatever, it just may not be practical, or maybe it's not really what you intend or need. This is why I like to reduce all my magical operations to as few words of intention as possible. Meaning getting to the nitty-gritty core of the intention. Not the manifestation of the intention, but the core. What is my real intent? What's my motivation, producer, director? What is my motivation? So let's say, I like to use this example because it's relevant to everybody. Let's say I'm running a little bit late on my rent and I need $500 now. Like I need it by the end of the week. So yeah, I'm going to do all the mundane stuff and I'm going to do a ritual or a spell for it too. Okay. Now the skeptical scientists will say magic doesn't work because it doesn't literally materialize money in your hands. Or they'll say it doesn't work because it's not reliable and all this shit. And that's, there's some truth to that. But here's the thing. So you do that ritual and you set up in your mind, maybe you try to do the sigil magic method. Okay. So you decide to make a sentence, preferably just a sentence, not like a paragraph or two. I have $500 for rent in time to pay my rent this month on X day, whatever you get it precise as you want. Okay. That's one sentence, but it's pretty. So then you're going to reduce it down and all this other shit. And you're going to, oh my God. Okay. So you're going to come up with a sigil based on that long ass sentence. You're going to reduce it down to one little string of characters. Okay. That's fair. Let me give you a better way. Let's reduce that whole intention from to really reduce it down to what you're trying to do in one word. What would be the one word for that issue? What is it you're trying to navigate? What is it you're trying to do? Mm-hmm. Now that's where the art and the science and all of that comes in, because now you've got to sit there and everybody's going to be different. Maybe it's not really that you don't want to lose your piss off your landlord. Maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's not that you necessarily want to pay your landlord. Maybe you're scared of your landlord. So maybe you need to reinvent your purpose here. Maybe not make it about getting the rent money. Maybe it should be about making your landlord have mercy on you. So then you could find a word, what would be the word for that then? Find that word that means, mercy. So mercy. So then you're going to take that word mercy, you're going to sigilize that. You're going to sigilize that word mercy. And as you do the spell with the sigil, you're going to be visualizing your landlord having mercy on you over the rent.
That's key. Your likelihood, again, speaking from the bottom up perspective, your likelihood of getting what it is you want is directly proportional to your ability to create in yourself the feeling of having gotten the thing. The biggest mistake people make, let's use money, for example, your example, right? If when you do the ritual and afterwards, you're sitting there going, oh my God, I need this money. Oh my God, I need this money. Oh my God, I need this money, right? You are focusing on the feeling of needing money. What are you going to get at the end of the day? You're going to get the need of money. You need to focus on the feeling of the having it to the point of like, so my first money sigil that worked, right, is, and also start small. Like, I know this shouldn't matter. It fucking matters, right? Like $1 million.
Well, it's a psyche issue. It's all about the psyche. If your psyche doesn't resonate with what you're trying to do, your psyche, meaning your attachments, your ego, your whole shebang behind the scenes that makes you what you are. Not your beliefs, not your words, not your thoughts, but the things that generate the words, thoughts, and beliefs, okay? And when I say generate, I mean manifest. I don't really mean generate. So if your psyche isn't resonant with the outcome, nothing you do will work, okay? So if your psyche is what you're describing, if your psyche is stuck on need, your psyche cannot get to the, the opposite of that, to having, to acquiring.
Having, yeah.
Right. So what you're doing with your visualization, and when I say visualization, I don't necessarily mean pictures, although that's one way. It could be just the feeling or the words or whatever your way of internalizing. So let's use the word internalize. You need to internalize the outcome that you're looking for in simplistic fashion. A blink moment, frozen in time, bang, I'm here, I got it. Hold that. Internalize that with everything you've got. Now, here's the thing. Remember, you're not causing it to happen. What you're doing is you're aiming. Think of it like you're aiming where you want to land, like you're going to go there. Don't think of it like I'm going to cause that to happen. Think of it like there's a multiverse out there.
You're setting a course.
Right. There's a multiverse out there, and this is where I want to end up. And in so doing, if that intention aligns with the divine, it will happen. Now, someone's going to say, Thorne, you're basically saying it's pointless because it's going to happen. Yes and no. Guess what happens if you do this enough? Eventually, you get to a point where you're basically prescient all the time to some degree. It's no longer a matter of guessing and hoping and wishing. You become totally reserved, patient, and you know outcomes. And now it's a toy, because the divine is not limited to its own will. Do you get me? Mm-hmm. The ego is limited to the divine will. The divine is not limited to anything. So at a moment's notice, the divine can be like, okay, this was cool. Now let's be Smurfs. And that could happen to you. So Christians asking, I'm at the point in my journey now where I'm perusing the question, if I am all things, why can't I say or do or how, blah, 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 because you still think you're Christian. Your psyche is still locked in on Christian. And that's how it's going to be. So long as you are having this incarnate delusion, you're going to be somebody, and that somebody's going to have limitations. And no matter where you are as that somebody, the limitations will be what they are. Let me give you an example, Christian. Let's say tonight you go to sleep and you do a spell before sleep. I'm going to wake up, and when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to have the ability to make mountains jump into oceans. Well, if you do that, you're going to land in a universe where that's possible, and no one's going to think it's weird, and you're not going to think that you accomplished anything. You're going to wake up in that world with the memory of always being able to do that, and instead you're going to be sitting there going, I wonder what it'd be like to live in a universe where I can't do that. Now, there's an exception to this. Somewhere in the multiverse is a universe where you get to have your cake and eat it too. But that breaks your psyche. You no longer, at that point, the other one breaks your psyche too, in case you haven't noticed. You're no longer the Christian you know. When you make that jump into that universe where you can just go and a mountain falls into an ocean, the person you think you are now goes, and it always goes away, but it goes away too traumatically for you to accept. So you jump right back to this. I want you to close your eyes right now and imagine the ability to do that. Guess what? You just went there. Guess what? You just came back because your psyche says, no, we're this guy. That's your egoic attachment. Until you transcend that, you can't go to that other reality and stay there. And if you do transcend it, you might only be able to go there for a little while because the divine may still intend to watch this guy. And that's not a curse. That's not a limitation. That's your will. That's literally, God wants to be you right now. Why is that such a hang up for people? God, like I've been saying, partially as a cope to get around all the negativity, but it's also the truth. As a cope to get around the negativity of the current era of bullshit we're going through, I'm reminding myself that I incarnated here for a reason to participate and observe what's going on and to have a role in it. That's why I incarnated here. It's not because I'm trapped here. It's not because I'm supposed to do something specific. I literally incarnated here to witness this and to be part of it. Because I already am, but I wanted to see it firsthand from this guy's perspective. So did you. Because we're all that same I. So the reason why you can't, it's not because you can't, it's because you've elected, you've chosen, your will, your intention is to be Christian. Now, Christian's life, Christian's story obviously includes delving into magic, mysticism, enlightenment, traveling the multiverse, the whole nine. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here listening, trying to get a grasp. So, but here's the thing. I don't know if you've noticed something here. Have you noticed that there's always a pattern of stepping stones between where you are and the thing you want to see? This is because the psyche can change, but not all at once the way you might want. It's very difficult to go from D.H. Thorne, the guy who doesn't do magic, to D.H. Thorne, who's a grandmaster wizard. Okay? This is why it took me my whole life to get here. Because my psyche didn't fall out of my mother's pussy and be like, I'm a wizard now. No, it took a journey to get here, because you could say that's the point, although that's kind of like new aging it a little bit. You your divinity wants this journey. And I say want, I mean that in the colloquial sense. It wills this journey to be its journey. And it's not a problem. You're not trapped. And I want you guys to know, people are like, where's the Gnosticism? This whole conversation has been Gnosticism. We're just not lining it up that way. We're telling you all the secrets of Gnosticism in these other dialects. Everything we've said is a Gnostic truth. Everything. Because it's all saying the same thing. It's saying, this is not reality. This is just what reality looks like. You are incarnate through ignorance. You've forgotten your monadic self. There's a demiurge which you project out of yourself to limit you here. That demiurge doesn't have to be a deity, you fucking fools. That demiurge could just be the laws of nature as you perceive them. That demiurge could be your boss. It could be the government. It could be an overbearing parent. Everything, there's a demiurge out there for everybody.
You know what the most common demiurge I see all the time is?
What's that?
It's encapsulated in the gnosis of the devil card. It's your self-limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You sit there and you tell yourself, I can't do this.
That's a good one.
Maybe you can't.
And you notice
do
that
it,
those
but
chains
you can
are
try.
not. You notice those chains aren't locked.
Mm-hmm.
In most of the good editions of the devil card and the tarot, those chains are not locked. You're not really bound to anything. So yes, they're the self-limiting. Yes. And that's the demiurge, and it's you as the divine manifest the demiurge in every incarnation, because you can't be incarnated without some form of demiurge. But that doesn't mean that the demiurge is lording over you. You put that there, and you put a light bringer there to lead you out. That light bringer could be anything. It could literally be a poem you heard. It could be a person like me, or it could be your vision of an angelic fallen being that inspires you to seek redemption and liberation. Christ is a Lucifer. Prometheus is a Lucifer, or better yet, maybe you want to say it the other way around because it's more historically appropriate to say Lucifer is a Prometheus. These are all archetypes. These are all faces of the same essential archetype. And that archetype is that of the liberator, specifically a being that's a liberator, but it could be extrapolated or extended into anything. Some people wake up just by watching the sunrise. They don't have anything else going. There's no reason that you have to go through all of this to wake up. Waking up happens, but the path, it's not necessary, but it is how the divine does it, because to snap right into awakening is traumatic. Ask anybody that got slipped, a DMT, drop in a drink or whatever, they got roofied at a party with DMT. Ask them what it was like. They're going to tell you it was a horror show. Maybe the trip was fun, but they're going to be like, I'm dead. I'm fucking dead. It's going to be traumatic as fuck. And if they're lucky afterwards, they will have someone guide them to help them understand what it was. There's actually a YouTube chick that this happened to. She was at a party. They slipped her some DMT. It blew her mind, but she didn't know what to make of it till she talked to somebody on a bus a few weeks later who explained to her. And she got it. And I know she got it because we can smell our own. I want you guys to know, people who have seen the other side, people who've seen the abyss, I can tell. And a lot of times when I speak to somebody who's hardcore into psychedelics, maybe they're not enlightened or something, but they know, they have an intuition that all is one, that all of this is just a dream. They know, and we know our own. We can smell each other from across a room. I'm not saying this as some kind of woo thing. It's my experience that whenever two people run into each other, if they have both had a non-dual or whatever your word for it is, awakening, they will recognize each other within a few sentences, if not before. It's something in the eyes. I actually have known people who had that awakening before I did. Maybe not to the level I've had it since then, but they've had that rudimentary awakening and I hadn't yet. And I thought they were a flake and a weirdo. And after having that, I look at them in a totally new light. I'm like, oh, I know that look.
Oh, shit.
I know that look. I know why they're looking at me that way. I know why they're talking that way. They've seen it too. And my relationship with them is totally different now. I don't look at them like they're just a stoner or something. I go, no, they get it. They may not get it the same way I do or to the same depth, but you could say the same thing potentially about me. Maybe they get it in a way I don't. So either way, but I know they got it. And that's another sign that you've had an awakening is because you can see when other people have too. You can see it even when they're not showing it to you. For example, Jim Carrey, everybody gives him a lot of praise lately because he hasn't had it. He's parroting it. I know he's parroting it. He's not sincerely had it.
Mm-hmm. He's read a lot of books about it.
He's read a lot of books about it. He's gained a lot from it. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's his way out of the pedo mill. Maybe that's how he gets out of Hollyweird. Maybe that's how he saves his own, soul, so to speak.
And maybe he gets it eventually. But
maybe he's had it since the last I've seen him too. That's a possibility. But the last lecture he gave, he was just parroting it. Mm-hmm. Parroting it. Sorry, I'm slurring. He's parroting it. And I can tell. There's nothing I can say that can prove it to you. Just know that if I ask other people who've had it and they sit down and they watch him, the consensus will probably be that he hasn't had it, but he speaks it very well.
Same thing as, I'm not going to say we can always spot the grifters.
Right. You can't always spot the grifters.
But one thing I can definitely spot with practitioners, even just from their YouTube, like you said, instantly, right? I can tell if this person's put in the work or not, and specifically the shadow work. Mm-hmm. Like we all know people, and I'm not going to name names where they have an awful lot of ability, but they haven't done the shadow work, and they end up detonating their lives over and over and over again with the same bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, you can't do enough shadow work. So I got to tell you,
you're never done.
You're still going to detonate your life, but there is a difference. There is, like, my detonation's totally different from someone else's detonation. We'll put it that way. Yeah. My detonation's not going to be, I went on a 3-week bender with meth and went and crashed my car into somebody and blah, blah, blah. My bender's going to be, I'm obsessed over politics. Yeah. That's my bender. That's my blow up. Eddie's is going to be, I don't know, whatever yours is going to be, Eddie. Everyone's going to have our own little, diorama of pain that we keep returning to. But if you're aware of it, so shadow work is not really about changing it. It's about being aware of it. Mm-hmm. When you're aware of it, it may change, but being aware of it is really the essence of it. If you're aware of what your shadow is or doing or whatever, these are bad words when I say doing, but that's colloquially all I can say. When you're aware of your shadow and what it's doing in your life, it loses control over you. Mm-hmm. Okay, you start to integrate that. Integration doesn't mean you change it. Integration just means it doesn't control you without your knowledge or whatever.
You've come to terms with it.
You've come to terms with it. So, for example, let's say you've got a really bad, usually, like for me, there's one shadow that, like, everybody's got one shadow that they don't want to work with or that they're grossed out by or whatever. For me, it's mostly the tall man. Because everything the tall man represents is stuff that I want nothing to do with. Well, that means that's a potential shadow for me. Now, I'm pretty secure that my tall man shadow is not a pervert tall man. My tall man is more likely to be an averse tall man. It's like that inverse of a pervert. I'm more likely to run prude than I am to run pervert. I'm more likely to be asexual about it. That doesn't mean I don't. Trust me, I do. It's just that I'm not sitting here going, where's the whips and chains, baby? I'm more like, I feel like doing it right now. Let's get this over with and have fun. It's not like I don't want to do it or I don't enjoy it. It's just, I want to do other things more.
Mine is I can't remember what you called it. It's the mother.
Oh, the dark mother. Yeah. I'm well aware. But see, that's the thing. I'm well aware. All of those other ones, I'm comfortable with facing in me. That tall man's a little harder because it's not I don't have any sexual hangups in the sense that most people do, but I have like an inverted hangup. My hangup is it's not depressed. It's not asexual. It's just, I look at it and I go, why are you guys so fucking hung up on this thing? It's like when someone really eats too much and you look at people and go like, damn, you can't stop eating. Like, holy fuck. Just because it tastes good.
When I blow up, and you've all seen it, it's I go through at least maybe half a dozen times a year, which is a good thing.
The fun. Yeah, that's the good thing.
Because the thing I've learned, the way I've come to terms with this particular thing, is that it's okay for me to take a knee and feel bad about myself for a couple of days and then get up and keep going. It's what screwed me in the earlier part of my life was denying it. The harder you push away, and then eventually taking a knee doesn't become optional. Only it's not a couple of days, it's 6 months.
Right. When you recognize that that's a thing, you do it on purpose and you get an outlet for it. And so let's say, for example, you've got a massive tall man problem. Maybe you're like a pedophile or something. Okay. I'm going to say it, just put it that way. Okay. Let's say you are something like that. How the fuck do you integrate that bastard? Right. You can't sit there and play with it. You can't like, that's not to say there aren't safe avenues for it. It's just, let's say you have that issue, it's wrong. And so you refrain from doing it, but you're afraid you're gonna. Well, I don't have advice for you because I don't suffer that. But I will say that if it's anything like anything else, the more that you avoid thinking about it or being mindful of it, the more it's likely to just creep in and hit you when you're not looking. So,
and the more anxious you get about it. So with me and the pills, this happened to me early on when I was prescribed the opioids, is I got myself in real trouble one month, and I learned a valuable life lesson when they wouldn't refill me for 3 more weeks. Is that my fear of becoming an addict was driving me into addiction because I was reaching for the pills to kill the fear.
Yep.
And the other thing I was for the pedo thing, I am not an issue I struggle with. Just
I bring it up because it's the most loathsome.
Yes,
to me.
That's our unforgivable sin.
Like that is something like if I walk in on that, I'm gonna go to jail the most Hellraiser-esque scene of gore that you've ever seen. I mean, you're going to need to have 10 guys hold me down because I am not going to just be like, oh, this is fine. They're going to find me you're going to be my sock puppet by the time this is over. And I'm going to be...
with where I work, if I'd walked in on Sandusky, I guarantee you that interaction would have ended up quite a bit differently than me walking out and calling my dad and waiting until the next morning to notify anybody at the university.
That's like that meme. You're going to die over this? Somebody is.
Yeah. But with things like that, right? And I do have some things like that, which are things that are there is no healthy, safe, sane, consensual outlet for it ever. But what there is,
like to stick my dick into a blender.
Yeah. What there is simply sitting with it. Right? Like, don't analyze it. Just accept it and sit with it. And eventually what you start to realize is that thing that you want is not the thing that you want. It's you haven't given yourself permission or found the shadow you think it is, the particular manifestation of the shadow that you think it is not what you're actually dealing with. What you're actually dealing with is a different shadow, a different thing that you have denied and repressed so hard that now it's metastasized and has found another way to try to get out. And to use, let's say I'm a Catholic priest, right? And I'm also a human being, and I have normal urges and desires like anybody else, but the church tells me I can't do that. And not only I can't do that, I can't even think that, because thinking that is just as bad as doing it. And then you put
the Catholic Church is a shadow making machine. It really is.
And then you put that person in a situation where the broader context of their entire life, because they're a priest. They live as part of the life of the church 24/7, is that they literally fetishize innocence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so prevalent.
And those two things come together. Mm-hmm. And there's also the factor of, why another profession, you're actually, in real world terms, a child is like an order of magnitude more likely to be molested by a teacher than a priest. But one important thing we all learned with the Sandusky thing is that any profession, any volunteer position, any context in which someone can get access to children is going to attract those guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's just how it is. Power attracts sociopaths. That's why almost everybody in government, even when it's good, is bad.
It's almost like the situation with, like I say, with politicians all the time. Nobody who wants to have power over another human being should ever be allowed to have it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say it exactly the same way, but there is a certain, the degree in which someone is in a position to help children, it's horrifying, but any position that gives you access to children, you have to be 10 times more careful. You have to assume that the person sitting across from you is doing this for one reason and one reason only, and it's not the good access.
One. Yeah.
I will, if I may, to go back to something a little bit earlier, I will give my testimony, and then I think I got to wrap it up because I'm
closing out too. I have like one little soliloquy I want to make, and then I'm good. So go ahead.
So for me, that moment, the big moment, right, was I was 17, and now I've been raised in a Christian home. And, we'd gone to church and stuff, but, early on, I considered this was me getting saved, right? Although even then I noticed that the way I went through that was very different than the way the people around me did. You still hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah, I just muted because I'm typing.
Oh, no, I heard the click. That's all. I thought my Bluetooth was cutting out. So I was 17, and, I've had major depressive disorder literally my entire life. I had my first suicidal thought at 6. A little voice in the back of my head that said, I hate myself and I want to die. And it never shut up until I was in my 40s. But at 17, as so often happens, anybody who has even a latent mental health issue, they tend to become florid in that span of time from about 15 to about 25. 17 was when the wheels fell off the wagon for the first time, and I had my first major depressive episode. And there was a day, an afternoon of me holding a .357 Magnum revolver in my lap and trying to decide if I wanted to put 1 bullet in it or 6 before I took it to school the next day. And in the context of that, eventually you reach a certain point where you're just desperate. I was just desperate. Any answer at all. Right. And so I said the prayer. Right. And the prayer was to the great whatever, to no one in particular, to whom it may concern, was the deal I made was I would go anywhere. I would do anything. I would pay any price at all. Sky's the limit. As long as I can see the truth. And in my head, as I'm saying this prayer to the great whatever, Like it was bolded and italicized in my head, with the trademark after it, the truth.
All
And
caps.
lo and behold, I got it like that. Right. And I turned 48 this year, and I'm just about recovered from it. Right. I mean, not to be flippant, but it was kind of like that moment. It's kind of like the total perspective vortex, where you see all of reality, and on a microscopic dot, on a microscopic dot, on a microscopic dot is a little arrow, and next to it are the words, "You are here." But it was the mystical
the zoom out,
right?
Yeah.
That's
definitely one of the ways that is one of the threshold awakenings, when you have a big zoom out like that.
And it was more than that. Like it was whatever it is. That's the other thing I find with the whatever you call it, the mystical experience, right? The big one that everybody seems to have. Like it's everything, but I literally cannot communicate it to you. I can't even think about it. Like right now, it's there.
There's just a memory of the memory. There's no, like, I've had that for when I've seen, so for example, I've done some astrally things where I've seen colors that don't exist in our reality.
Yeah.
I've seen shapes that don't exist in our reality, higher dimensions like hypercubes. I saw them as they actually look. I know I did. I have a memory of going, holy shit, this is what it looks like. But I come back here and it's like, I can't see it anymore. I don't remember what it looked like.
I can still see it, but it's like there's
your version of it. Like,
right, it's impossible to communicate.
Like when I try to see that color again, I see the closest thing to it, and I know it's not it, right? Or when I think of the hypercube, I come back to snap to that stupid three-dimensional hypercube that we see. I saw a hypercube as it is, and that was like, what the fuck? And then when I came back, I can only think of it it's literally like you are stuck in a frequency. And this is why frequency is so commonly used as a metaphor in New Age shit. All right, Patchy gave us some money. He said, just walked into my kitchen and found pizza and wine sitting on my counter. Holy damn. So unless he's fucking with us, damn, his magic
like I
worked.
said to him, fucking magic, man. That's how it works. Sometimes magic works like magic.
Yep. Patchwork also says Necronomicon is key to my liberation. And he says mine is another one. He says mine is I love to hate. His shadow is he loves to hate parts of himself. Yeah. So let me tell you what I was writing down while you were talking. And by the way, Eddie, I'm glad that you took the right decision. But even if you didn't, that's your choice. All is divine. Nothing is forbidden.
It's like that line from City Slickers. Kill anybody today? They ain't over yet.
Over yet. I prefer I love that one. Okay. So let me say a few things that I wrote down. First and foremost, your ultimate shadow, especially if you're dualistic, is your divinity. That is your ultimate shadow. If you merge with your divinity, you merge with your shadow, if you integrate your whole shadow, you transcend. But you can't do that in your mind. That final shadow has to be done through gnosis. 2, you can do the best shadow work in the world just by never blocking any thoughts. So for example, there's a practice that I do intentionally sometimes where I will intentionally think about the most horrific things I can. I will picture my loved ones being mutilated or destroyed. I will picture I'll picture myself doing it. I will picture the most vulgar things that I would, like we were talking about before, destroy other people over. Things that I consider the most taboo, disgusting. I will allow my mind to think any thought at once without hesitation. If I start visualizing myself stomping my dog to death, who I love more than I love pretty much any human on this planet besides my wife and my kid, and family and shit, then I will let my mind go there. And I will I'll play that fucker out. I'll rerun the tape a few times. I will make it worse. I will picture the most horrendous, horrible way to do it. It's like that. It's like in the old Pinocchio when he made him smoke the whole carton of cigarettes. I will make my consciousness smoke the whole fucking carton of cigarettes of morbidity until it gets it out of its system, because
that is the gnosis of Asmodeus.
Yeah. So the only way to truly integrate those shadows is to not resist them when they pop up. Now, that's number one. Number two, don't chase your shadows by waiting for them to appear and then chase them around. Instead, do yourself a favor. Shadownomicon attempted this, but it's only one book's worth. Do some research on all of the taboos and vices and things that mental illness. Do something and really collect a good spectrum of ways the shadow manifests. Or use something like Shadownomicon, or use the Qliphoth, or whatever your method is. Okay? And use them to intentionally look under the hood of every part of every nook and cranny you can find. And when you're done, look for more. Just keep looking. Don't wait for them to pop up, because they won't. You won't realize them till it's too late. You've got to go through them one. Look, I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
The difference is I know I'm working on it, and I know how to be mindful. That's how I make progress. Okay. But don't chase them around by waiting for them to pop up. You've got to. So how do you see all the colors of the rainbow? Well, you don't wait for them to appear one by one. You find out what a rainbow is, and you see one. You know what I mean? You don't wait for those colors to happen. You've got to go. So look for the whole spectrum of shadow at the same time and sit with them all one by one. That's why in Shadownomicon, I made several major shadows that were meant to be categorical. Now, did I encounter them? Yes. But encountering them, if people thought that I encountered them in this theistic way, you got to remember, I write them a certain way because I want you to approach them. I want you to put some reality into them. So I'll write them. That doesn't mean I didn't see them the way I described them. We fought those fuckers when we were kids. Like, we literally had swords that we blessed, and we fought them. We externalized. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know we were externalizing our own fears and egos and shit when we were doing it. But that's what we were doing. And we fought them physically with swords and shit, like weird little LARPing fucking weebos, dude. It was hilarious. If you saw me when I was 18, Wyatt would have loved me, but Eddie would have been like, dumb kids.
Yeah, I've been a grumpy old man since 8th grade.
Yeah, so maybe when you were in 7th grade, you might have joined us, but yeah. We did see them that way. If I was to sit here and say, oh, we just made it up, that would be a lie. But if I said that I saw them the same way I see Eddie when I hung out with him in Newark, that would also be a lie. I saw them in a quasi-internal, externalized way. No one else could see them. They weren't physically there. But other people who also were dealing with it often would see the same ones or the same places. Once in a blue moon, we would all see the same shadow in the same place at the same time. But we were all on a similar wavelength at the time. There were times we didn't. There was times I'd see one, nobody else saw it. Many times my friends would see it, and they were the only ones who saw it. And then there was times where we'd all be like, did you see that in the corner? And we'd all be like, yep. And we'd all have seen it. But they weren't physically there. They're not objectively there. They're subjectively there. If you really do the non-dual thing, you realize subject and object is an illusion anyway. There's just being, and sometimes it looks like it's over there, and sometimes it looks like it's over there. So turn away from over externalizing or over dualizing or over materializing these things. There is literally no reason why. I've had people come to me that were so disappointed because they couldn't get a spirit to manifest in a way that they could see or really believe in. And I would say, I don't understand your issue here. Can you imagine it? Well, yeah, that's all you need. Start there and fake it till you make it. And believe me, you won't even need to see them in your physical reality. In fact, spirits at first will show up physically, I've found, You'll get more physical manifestations, just like you'll get stronger manifestations when you first do magic. The spirits will often show up with a lot of noise the first time, especially when you're new to this shit. They will wow you. But then as you learn to see them in their real form, if you try to force them to appear in a manifested physical kind of way, they're going to start turning on you a little bit, because they're like, you don't need this. You know how to see me without it. Why do you need me to appear in the flame? When they say appear in the flame, they don't mean literally have the flame look like the spirit. They mean zone out in that fire and see it inside. That doesn't mean it won't appear as a physical manifestation of the flame. It means don't try to make it do that. Use that flame as a bridge, as a gate to see it inside yourself. There's a reason why cave people love staring at fire. There's a reason why we love staring at fire. It's a mesmerizing thing. And there's a reason for that. So use fire. That's why I use fire so much when I'm doing conjuring, because they appear in the flames and in the smoke, the mesmerization of it. You can sit there and stare at that flickering flame and your mind will play tricks. You'll see shit, and then you'll go just zone out inside yourself, and there's the spirit waiting for you. It doesn't have to appear in your living room wearing a fucking toga and smelling of whatever incense, okay? It's just in your, it just has to appear in consciousness. Consciousness is not in a place. A place is in consciousness. You got me? All right, let's close out with these super chats. Patrick says, the pizza thing is legit, and I probably should analyze these thoughts more and integrate myself. And then he says, I usually see shadow people at my workplace and in my basement where the liquor is. Yeah, I mean, like, they will appear externalized. They're one of the spirits that appear more externalized to a lot of people than others do, actually. There's a lot of people who will never see, like, a demon or a god or whatever in any form, but they'll see shadows. So think about that one. So shadows externalize very easily, but that's because they're projected from you. All right, guys. Unless Eddie has something else to say, let's wind it down.
Buy my shit.
Buy my show. Oh yeah. So for those who forgot or were not here, Eddie needs the funds. He needs some ends. So we put a link up there. He's doing some readings. Why don't you give him the runaround, Eddie? There's a pinned comment. That's Eddie's comment.
Yep. So for the month of June, doing half price as a soft launch. And for $20, you'll get 30-minute live video reading, tarot or runes, 3-card pull, any question you want, general, we'll hash that out when we do it. That's why I like to do them live. And for $50, a 60-minute consultation. Ask me any question you want. I can help you design a ritual. You can have this kind of experience where we just sort of walk through whatever. And also, it doesn't have to be restricted to magical topics. I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing this is to level up my, well, not my skills. I have the skills. I need to get the certifications. Because I've spent the last 20 years working at a place that really doesn't like certifications. Now I kind of have to go get them all at once. And that ain't cheap. Trying to get a better job. And also upgrade my point is the money you're going to be spending on this is not, it's getting rolled right back into my business.
You're investing
not,
in Eddie.
I'm not just spending it on, hookers and blow. Donations are also accepted, and I will thank you very much.
You should put up a little GoFundMe type of deal, although I probably wouldn't use GoFundMe because I like to steal money when they don't like the politics.
Well, that's what coffee does. And the main reason,
okay.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, coffee, you can do monthly subscriptions like you do with Patreon, with exclusive content, yada yada yada. You can set goals and publicly advertise those goals so that if it's like a GoFundMe thing where you're collecting funds for a specific thing, you can do that. And I will be doing that just as a matter of transparency. Mm-hmm. as I start collecting stuff, I'll probably put the first one up tonight. But all of this will be live by June 1st, but don't feel like you have to wait until, next week. You can
also message him on Discord.
You can message me on Discord.
He's a mod on Discord.
You can contact me through the coffee page. I know some of the people who watch this are not members of the Discord.
Or they were.
And, that is the place to come interact with me for all things Eddie.
And in the very near future, I intend to do a good movie night or two. In fact, I'd love to do like a movie marathon, like a whole day of just streaming movies, like people pop in and out. But Night Riders was mentioned as a movie that Eddie and I want to host.
I love Night Riders. Actually, I love that movie. This wouldn't be for everyone, but I know you and I would love it. I love this movie. I think you would love the shit out of it. Speaking of, Fear City, back in the 70s is Maniac, not the Elijah Wood one. The one from, I think, 1980.
Yeah, I remember the Elijah Wood one a little bit. I didn't watch it.
It's not a remake, I don't think. Okay. But yeah, no, it's great. And by great, I mean, like, it'll leave a good aftertaste in your mouth. Like,
Joffrey gave us another 55,000 million pennies, and he says, "Awesome chat, guys." Thank you, Joffrey.
Thank you.
So yeah, support Eddie. He's been a true blue friend of the Thorne Hub since its inception, and he is the yang to my yin. He has the intellectual chops, definitely, to help you, probably in ways that I can't, because he, if depending upon how you think, Eddie may be more your speed than I am. I'm more of the lazy, laid back, just fucking do it. But he's going to be like, I got the whips, the chains, and the posts. So come on over.
And I am, to spell it out, I am an ordained minister in the Church of the Subgenius. I can, in fact, legally perform weddings, although I'd have to get recertified in Pennsylvania. It's only like $50.
I think I have the one through, what is it? The one that everybody uses, fucking
Universal Life Church.
Universal Life Church, yeah.
And I am also I've been validated by the council in China. I am, in fact, the reincarnation of the ancient Taoist master Lo Hung Wang.
I love it. So yeah, Eddie may be more your speed. So he's all over the Discord. And, one of these days I should have you do a reading for me and just post that up as Eddie's work. Like we'll do it on the side, but record it and then post it up as Eddie giving Thorne a reading. And if it comes out good, we'll post it.
I will. These are limited, right? Because I do it for free. These are very limited, and I never feel like I'm under any obligation to do one. But one of my stupid magician tricks has been, over the years, I will do cold readings for free. Now those come to you via PDF, and it's when I have time. Mm-hmm. Like, you think the question or what you want in your head, and
I mean, look, as someone who has started practicing a little bit of what most people call remote viewing, or I prefer remote awareness. Everybody can do this. Everybody can do remote viewing. It's not. The thing is, just stop thinking of it like you're picturing something. It's not about what your brain does. Mm-hmm. It's literally the first thing that comes to mind, and it's going to be symbolic most of the time. Mm-hmm. So what you do is, for example, the method I prefer to do remote awareness or remote viewing is somebody has a thing they're trying to find out. So they put it in an envelope, or they write it down, or whatever. They get a really good, in their mind, what it is. Then they assign it a number. Then you give me that number without telling me a goddamn thing about it. And I'm not going to offer this service yet. I got to practice it more, but I need partners to practice it with. So maybe I'll do that at some point. I'll get some people together and we'll just fuck around with it. Because I can't know what you're trying to figure out. If you say, I'm looking for my lost dog, I'm fucked. I can't help you now. it's got to be a complete mystery to me what you're trying to figure out. That's why it's a random string of numbers. You send me a random string of numbers, and then I can sit back and I can do my thing, and I'll start writing words, drawing little pictograms, spend about a minute or two on it, not too long. Just get the first shit that comes out. Then I send that to the person, and, you know, or they give me the image or whatever, and then we go through that and be like, okay, that's a hit, that's a hit, that's a hit, that's not. We use either way, there's some confirmation, but it's not given as in we found the person or something. We just say, okay, this person's on target. Is there anything else? We can develop it more. But usually, look up how real remote viewing is done. It is a real thing. The government really uses this because it does work. There's no question it works. The couple of times I've done it were 90% hits each time, the first time. So it's like the first time I did it, like it was a video and the guy's like, all right, here's a number. And then you know, don't cheat, don't go to the end. So I didn't cheat. I was really good. I wrote down everything, and I wrote this weird bunch of shit down, like smelly. Why would I put smelly? There's all these things. It was a picture of the Peru mountains where Machu Picchu is, with a fucking llama sitting, llama's ass pointing at the camera. There's the smelly. I had the fucking mountains drawn. I drew a circle. I don't know why. There must have been something there that was a circle that I didn't see. So the point is, I got like 90% of what I wrote symbolically correct. And I was like, no wonder I'm pretty damn good at intuition, because I do this all the time. This is how I operate most of the time. I go by my gut first impulse. I don't think about it. Just whatever pops into my head, that's my intuition on it, and I go. It works. It really does. So cold readings are really a thing. The thing is, a cold reading is going to be more vague or symbolic than maybe a direct, like, known. If you know the person, you're going to be filtering it through your knowledge of them, and that gives you sometimes less accuracy, actually, believe it or not. So
yeah, every time I've done one, I haven't had one that's a complete miss. I mean, obviously they vary a little bit, and like you said, it will be a little vague, but usually what I do is a 3-card pull, general, past, present, and future. And by the time I get to the end, you know, I've
zeroed in.
Yeah. And every time the feedback I've gotten is, this, I know exactly what this lines up to and what this is.
That's why I preach the importance of anchor cards or anchor things in your readings. You should always have something that must be accurate, or the whole reading is in question. So if I have a present, if that present is not accurate, then forget everything else. You know, that spinning thing, Joffrey says, that spinning thing DH in your hand reminds me of those crazy fidget spinners. It is, because I have ADHD, and it's like what I do when I get bored. So I need like one of those fidget spinners. I actually looked at a few. I want one. All right, guys, this is it. Until next week, we'll see what comes up next week. Near future is not looking good, by the way. Get your preps in order. That's all I'm going to say. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
All right, Edmondo.